Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It's 7 o'clock. We just about made it. I got so carried away. We were talking about so many great things and making so many great plans. Emma Wolf is here. Very good morning to you, Emma. Because it's Monday morning. She's always here. The Herons are back as well, of course. Pooch is here. Charlotte's setting everything up. I've just written good morning, everyone. So apologies if it appears as if we're a bit shambolic this morning. But, you know, we had a very busy weekend. There was lots going on. So much to talk about this morning as well. And the headlines, of course, all about Andrew at the moment, I think, it's probably right to say. Police last night facing mounting calls to launch a full investigation into Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's role as the UK's trade envoy. What are the police waiting for, is what it says in front of the Daily Mail. And I mean, there's
Seriously.
loads of Andrew coverage inside the papers as well. And you've got to say, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations over the weekend, Emma, I don't know about you, from people saying, I think he might end up going to prison, you know.
Yeah. Thames Valley Police are now looking at this seriously, aren't they? They're going to have to look at this.
Yeah.
The DPP, Stephen Parkinson, I think, came out over the weekend and made it very clear that nobody is above the law.
Nobody's above the law, right?
Yeah. Andrew was a trade envoy.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder, and I know we shouldn't speak ill of the dead, it does make you wonder what the Queen really thought was going on, because more and more and more is coming out. Anyway, he was a trade envoy from 2001 to 2011, 10 years, which he was travelling around, going to China, going to all over the world.
And never very far away from a sort of comely maiden, if you want.
A comely maiden, exactly. Young ladies all over the place. But
Chinese
also
models all over the place, right?
Yeah, well, that's one thing. But also forwarding on all of this very, very sensitive information, the RBS bailout, the kind of Aston Martin in receivership or whatever. And there he is, forwarding it all to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I know, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I had this conversation with my sister last night, and she's worked at very high levels of Wall Street and, you know, big companies internationally. She's travelled around. She's like, I can't believe that all of these kind of very sensitive documents could be passed around as if nobody knew it was happening, which leads me to then believe, well, did other people know that it was happening, and did they just cover it all up?
Well, it's now a security issue, isn't it? I mean, it was bad enough last week when we heard about the royal palaces and there were women, what was it, the revolving door, literally, there were so many women coming in and out.
Right.
The police weren't allowed to know their names. It was all kind of after dark, so I do wonder what the rest of the royal family knew.
Yeah, right.
But that is a security issue.
Well, you also wonder, you know, because Buckingham Palace, you know, I've never been inside Buckingham Palace, and if you've ever been in one of those garden parties, I've never been invited, but, you know, I'm assuming it's not that easy to smuggle somebody into Buckingham Palace. It's a bit like Downing Street. There's security guards, there's royal protection
officers. You don't just wander up, you don't just get the tube there and then walk up there.
No,
you have to
just put your key in the door and in you go. I mean, you know, just come in with me, put this blanket over your head. I mean, there are dozens of people that would have seen whoever it was that he was smuggling in, surely.
Exactly, and that's what the kind of royal protection, there's one of them's come out, one of these ex-coppers has come out and said, you know, we were basically told sort of don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
You know, then we never had the actual names of the people. Presumably, you or I going into Buckingham Palace, into the inner sanctum, would need to show our actual identity and our actual security and our actual name.
Or somebody would say, and who's this you're bringing in?
But also about these But also about these documents, how on earth, as you say, how was all this stuff forwarded on?
Yeah.
Because in most companies and in most financial companies, you can't even do that. You can't just press forward on really, really sensitive stuff.
Right.
It's all encrypted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what was happening.
Well, again, talking to people in security and in kind of cyber security and all of that, they go, you're not actually able in most big companies to forward things which are sensitive because it gets blocked.
Exactly.
There's a sort of, you know, there's a program that kicks in, and you know, if I wanted to say, I don't know, if I was working in Downing Street, I would have thought, and I wanted to send you as a journalist a piece of paper.
Exactly.
Surely somebody blocks that.
Exactly. I mean,
and if they don't, why don't they?
But plenty of us get our pay slips and things, and it's kind of, even now, that kind of pathetic little pay slip is encrypted.
Yeah.
With a, you know, there's like a two-stage, the thing
yeah.
that you didn't have when you had your fun and games last year.
Yeah.
The two-stage
well,
encryption
I mean,
or whatever.
I mean, it drives you mad, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to, like, you know, double verify yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
On
so, I
some
mean,
kind
how
of
on earth?
DocuSign agreement or something like that.
It's ridiculous things.
It is mad. I mean, the Sun have got a spread on 8 and 9 pages inside. Riddle as Epstein files are censored, because it turns out that a load of documents which journalists have already seen, which have Andrew's name on, have now somehow had Andrew's name redacted from them. And everybody's going, how did that happen? And why has it happened in the past sort of 2 weeks? Because we've seen these documents already. Now when we go to look for them, his name's not there.
It's ridiculous.
Does that mean there's another cover-up going on?
Well, exactly. How much more is going to be protected? But also, why is he still living at the taxpayer's expense? Why is this man who's lied and lied and lied and lied again, lied on television, lied, pretty? I mean, it's just. I think the kind of the circle around Andrew. I think the king needs to just come out and chuck him out.
Well, he does because
get rid of him. We don't want him on the Windsor estate. I don't care what Sandringham estate. I don't want him on any estate.
No.
Well, except a council estate.
A council estate, maybe. But and the other thing is that Charles is now in danger of being tainted by all of this because in terms of he came out on Friday, I think it was, and denied that he had been part of the members of the royal family who gave Andrew money to pay off Virginia Giuffre. However, what did he know? And did he cover anything up? I think that's the problem. If Andrew ends up being questioned by Thames Valley Police, then surely Charles, who said he would help, is going to have to be questioned as well.
Well, Mike, that's why I mentioned the Queen, and I know that everybody adores the Queen, but I just cannot believe that someone as intelligent and as on top of her, across her family and across the kind of affairs of the country, I cannot believe that this stuff was going on for decades and that no one ever spoke to her about it or that she never knew anything about it.
Yeah.
We know that he was her favourite son. But I think there are questions there about what she knew and what that money, who gave him that money. I mean, that's millions of pounds.
Well, you're talking about a criminal conspiracy here, which could involve the former monarch of this nation. Yeah. Which is extraordinary.
Yeah, and Thames Valley Police are going to have to look into it, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, in the Mail today, Norman Baker, the former Lib Dem MP, who's now a royal author, has said he sold out his own country. What is that if it's not treason?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And also, it's not just about, believing in your country and being nice. It's literally criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, to forward on some of these documents is criminal,
Absolutely.
charge.
Dodgy Dave says this, I live in a council estate. I definitely don't want Andrew here.
No, exactly. I was going to say, it's not very fair on the people who live on nice council estates. Why should they have him?
By the way, the super chats are available today, so by all means, get stuck in and do all of that. Some great stories around as well, apart from that. One that I'd like to talk about, which hasn't been picked up that much actually this morning, is the one that was in the Sunday Times yesterday about Labour Together. This incredible story about how an organisation run by Morgan McSweeney, pretty much, which involved a current junior minister and basically was the organisation that bankrolled Keir Starmer's electoral campaign, tried to smear Sunday Times journalists.
Two of them.
One of them because he was Jewish, another one because they tried to make out they were Russian assets.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's filthy, isn't it?
Absolutely. They paid them £30-something thousand, £36,000 to write this 58-page dossier on, I think it was Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York, and various other people were sort of dragged in. Totally unfounded accusations about Russian links and taking money from... And... what was it used for? Just to smear them, basically. Just to try and
discredit anybody who was looking into anything to do with Labour, which might harm their chances of being elected.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. It's just straight and out corruption.
Absolute corruption. And there are questions there, aren't there, as well, about what the Prime Minister knew.
And people were saying yesterday, if this had been the Tories or Reform, the Labour government would be, or Labour Party would be asking for a police investigation.
Of course they would. And I think there should be a police investigation.
Yeah, absolutely right. What about this on the front of the Sun? £500,000, this is going to drive you insane, right? Phone compensation for migrants.
Absolute
human
shocker.
rights have been breached, don't you know? You can see it on there. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobiles seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000.
I don't know whether this one makes me more angry than the man who had a transgender operation, the
guy from the Philippines.
Yeah, who hadn't even been given official leave to remain. Yeah. He was then given on the NHS a transgender operation, I won't go into the details, and sort of prancing around in his hospital gown, look at my new body, aren't I great? When there are British people who've paid taxes, there are elderly people waiting for hip replacements or whatever, and this guy's having gender reassignment surgery, basically, on the NHS. Without even being legally allowed to remain in this country, so he has no right. Anyway, this is pretty outrageous, this thing about the phones.
Instead of deterring illegal entry, the system has ended up financially rewarding it. This is William Yarwood, a friend of ours from the Taxpayers Alliance. Basically, border officials searched these people when they landed at Dover, found that they had illegal phones.
And that was part of it. Starmer said, we will seize their phones, we will go through all the information, we will use their phones to find out, we will smash the gangs by seizing their phones. And they're now claiming compensation for that.
How is it
Absolutely.
possible that this government is so bleeding useless, right? Mehmet, who's going to be on the show later on from Migration Watch UK,
brilliant.
taxpayers should not have to pay huge sums to people who have broken into the country. But activist lawyers have said it was a breach of their human rights. I'm sorry, if you break into this country,
Absolutely outrageous.
How have you got any human rights?
Exactly.
You know?
But also, this was a policy. They were going to take the phones in order to get the information, in order to stop the boats and stop the gangs and smash the gangs. And now they're compensating them for taking the phones.
I know. I mean,
well, we're compensating them.
Christ, we should have a legal system that just says, I'm sorry, we clamp down on illegal migration, therefore you do not have the right to sue the government.
Exactly. And if you come into this country via a dinghy, we will take anything of yours that you know, I mean, it's not part of the deal.
No. It is extraordinary how useless this government seems to be. And I count the Tories as well, because they had one sort of Home Secretary after another, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, all lawyers who supposedly know the law. Shabana Mahmood's another one. They're all getting taken to court all the time, and they keep losing.
Absolutely outrageous.
Why don't they know the bleeding law?
But even worse than the phones is the fact that the people, when they arrive, are then given accommodation and, you know, all of that NHS treatment for free. I think, you know, we just how much more of this can we pay for?
And it says 41 claims are yet to be settled. If they were each agreed at the same rate of £6,587.50, which is what they've all got. I mean, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Imagine if you went on holiday somewhere and you got there and you've been there for a couple of days and you didn't like the way that you got treated at the airport, and you get £7,000 compensation.
Absolutely outrageous.
And you spend it on your holiday.
Thought that headline was about you, Mike.
Phony
Border officials searched illegal migrants' phones. They were trying to search their phones, but they wouldn't hand over. They wouldn't hand over the phone.
Don't hand over your phone. Well, but
I mean, it's close to that. They're like, no, you're not having my phone. Well, you've just broken into the country.
Yeah, I know. It is bloody ridiculous.
You don't have any rights.
It is absolutely utterly ridiculous. And with every kind of step that this government seems to take forward, they take about 3 steps backwards.
Yeah, we're not getting anywhere.
No.
We're not getting anywhere. I don't know what the latest crossing numbers are. I mean, it's been a bit chilly.
Well, what we know from last week, I think, in fact, I've got there's a very interesting development coming up on this show. We're going to be working closely with another organisation who are going to start giving us some more information on this kind of thing. And it's becoming quite clear that the numbers of people crossing are being wildly underestimated, and they're getting it massively wrong, and they're not telling us the truth.
We used to have a ticker, didn't we?
There's more people coming in than we are being told, because what we do know, I think it was the beginning of last week, 541 people came in the first 2 days of the week, but then we didn't hear anything else. You know, and you now have to sort of go looking quite hard to find out how many people are coming over. It's absolutely shocking. Meanwhile,
speaking of phones,
how about this? Workers' rights reforms push a third of employers to cut hiring. Surprise, surprise, because it's now so ridiculous in terms of workers' rights and in terms of national insurance that you have to pay, more than a third of employers are set to cut back on hiring people because of the government's reforms. Yeah,
and all across the weekend papers we have this issue of we now have the highest youth unemployment rate in Europe. We've now overtaken Europe. 15% of 16 to 24-year-olds are not in employment. And people are saying, the Bank of England is saying, it's because we've had hike after hike in the minimum wage. And employers simply can't afford it anymore. Whereas you or I, when we were teenagers, we could get a job as a waitress or as a barman or whatever. Now, in the hospitality sector especially, but across the kind of younger sector, people can't just be, they can't employ 3 young people to work in their cafe or whatever. They simply cannot afford it because of the hike after hike after hike of the minimum wage.
Well, my son, who works in a kind of hospitality sector place in Manchester, was saying that not only have they cut back on the number of people they've employed in it's like a music venue, nightclub type place. So instead of having 7 people running the bar, there's only 3. And now they give them fewer hours as well because they can't afford to employ them. So actually the result
doing
is
more work
so
for less
putting
money.
minimum wage up means they're making less money, they're working less, they're getting less kind of, work experience. So it's all gone wrong.
It's that as well. It's the fact that your first job, your second job, those jobs that you do when you're working your way up, they're your kind of connection. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you meet someone and then you go into another job. It's kind of how you develop. When 16 to 24-year-olds just come out of college and go straight onto benefits, we have a real problem in this country.
We really do.
And that is what the government has done. They have literally strangled employment.
Yeah.
When Rachel Thieves goes on and on and on about investing and growth, I mean, there is no growth strategy.
No.
I think it was Wes Streeting that said that. They have no growth strategy.
They have no growth strategy. He actually put it, he said he shouldn't have said it, but, it was true. Here's one that'll annoy you. Taxpayers pay £90 million for 15,000 public sector workers to do trade union work. So to not even do their own jobs, that get paid £90 million of your money and my money.
Absolutely outrageous.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Where's it going to end, this whole business? I mean, I see old Starmer was over in Munich yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some clips that we'll play later on throughout the course of the show. And he came home yesterday to play football, with
I'm glad he's, focusing on the important things.
I mean, yeah.
Can I just say, I genuinely feel so sad that we have a Prime Minister, Mike, who is happier in another country.
Yeah.
He is happier not being in Britain. Whenever he's abroad, especially in Europe, whenever he's abroad, he just looks relaxed. He loves hanging out with Ursula von der Leyen and Macron and Zelensky and all of that. And when he's in this country, he looks really tense and really miserable. Yeah. And when he was at the Munich conference, by the way, did you see the logo of that conference?
No.
The logo of the Munich Security Conference was like an elephant with bits falling off it.
Really?
What?
I didn't see it.
That's the state of
We've
Europe.
got some funny clips from it because Hillary Clinton turned up for some obscure reason, and she got a few strips torn off her by the Czech Prime Minister.
Well, good. But wasn't Marco Rubio amazing?
He was good.
Doesn't Starmer look happy when he's not here?
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's a very good point that you make. A lot of people saying, how about people who get their phones stolen in Britain? Can they get compensation?
Yeah, well, can we get... Yeah, exactly.
That'd be nice. I mean, I had my phone stolen. Yeah. Had that all happening to me. No compensation available to us, I'm afraid. A couple of other things to mention. You pointed this one out earlier. Ed Miliband's blackout threat, page 2 of the Times, right?
Yeah.
He's basically saying if we don't do all the right things when it comes to net zero, we won't have any electricity.
He thinks he's going to impose power cuts on the people of this country.
Yeah.
I think this might be the straw that tipped the... What is it?
Breaks
straw
the
that
camel's back.
broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
This might be the tipping point. People are broke. Pooch and Mike were talking about eating cans of baked beans and being cold and everything.
Yeah.
People are cold, they're hungry, they're stressed, they're worried, they haven't got jobs, they work too much, whatever it is. In this country, you start imposing power cuts on us by Mad Miliband.
Right. Because apparently we're all supposed to be better off and we're supposed to be saving money.
To meet his net zero targets.
Right. I mean, do you know anything that is less expensive now than it was this time last year?
Everything
is. I don't.
Everything is more expensive.
Yeah.
And anybody who says, the cost of living is coming down, inflation is coming down, in the real world, it's not.
No.
Okay, it's not. People, the ministers saying this stuff, the officials saying this stuff don't go to the supermarket. They don't pay their bills. They don't know. They don't even fill their car because the driver fills their car or the Uber fills their car.
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally not living in the real world.
And they don't have to pay rent. They don't have to pay mortgages because basically they claim all that back.
They claim it all back.
Somebody does it for them.
They don't see a pint of milk being a quid rather than whatever it was 5 years ago. I mean,
it used to be the old adage, wasn't it? If you got the Prime Minister into the studio, you go, how much is a pint of milk? They don't know. They never know. No. How much is a pint of beer? How much is, a pint of Guinness? How is Tony Blair still walking about as a free man, says Lord Vader in Malaysia on the Super Chat. I haven't quite finished reading that, Pooch. He's made it disappear already. He took the UK to war on shaky intel and never took any responsibility. Politicians need to be held accountable just like anyone else. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not sure I'm going to watch it. A great show, Mike says, Rudy Gore on the Super Chat. Thank you. There's a Channel 4 documentary coming out, I think tonight or tomorrow, about Tony Blair, right, in which they interview Cherie Blair and I think him. And she is in the papers today saying he was a better Prime Minister or a better politician than he was a husband. And she says, he's not very romantic. He never bought me any flowers. He never bought his wife any flowers.
That is pathetic, isn't it? Could he not even have got his assistant or one of his minions to buy her flowers?
Well, you would have thought so. Where is it? Page 17 of the Daily Mail.
They had a lot of children. You remember that ghastly moment when she appeared at the... I mean, that was bad. Well, she appeared at the front door in her nightie, and then they were having a fourth or a fifth child, and we just didn't want to know.
Well, no, the worst thing
the details coming out about where it was...
When they supposedly conceived one of the kids up in Balmoral. While the Queen was in residence.
And we didn't want to know that.
I really don't want to know about that.
I don't want to know.
I mean, there's also stories that have been written about his association, shall we say, with Wendy Deng, Rupert Murdoch's former wife.
Yes.
and he apparently fell out with Tony Blair as a result of an affair that he denies having, but that has been written about, as I say, in this new book in America.
Yeah.
It's just extraordinary. So Lady Blair, I can't even believe she's called Lady Blair. And apparently, this, I'm not going to make a joke about this because it's not right to make a joke about it, but apparently he was inspired to be a politician after watching Schindler's List.
Oh dear.
Apparently that's because he took from that, you know, you should never remain silent. I'm glad that's what he took from it.
You should never be a war criminal.
You should never be a war criminal either. Very good point. He's an amazing politician, says Lady Blair. As a husband and as a human being, that's a different matter.
That is a terrible thing to say about your husband. It's not
if you were married to someone, right, and you said that, don't you think they'd come home and go, is that the best you can come up with?
Awful. That's a really, really awful thing to say about your husband.
It is. So he doesn't sound like a very nice bloke, does he?
No, I don't think he is. He looks like a sort of haunted man. He's another one who looks sort of haunted.
He does.
In the way that sort of David Cameron always looks quite relaxed, pottering around. He doesn't really care that he was Prime Minister or that he isn't anymore.
Right.
Rishi Sunak...
Well, he didn't really do anything, did he?
He didn't really do anything. Rishi Sunak seems to be enjoying his life. He's got a couple of very, very lucrative deals here and there, and he writes the odd column. But Tony Blair... Although he's certainly coined it in, hasn't he?
He's made a fortune. Well, they all get a foundation. He learned from the Clintons, I think. You know, the Tony Blair Foundation. And they suddenly just load it up with loads of money, international banking. Remember, he ended up being...
Big in Jerusalem.
Yeah, he ended up being the Middle East peace envoy. He then, I think, had a job with JP Morgan as some kind of... Do you remember that period when he had the sort of longish hair as well?
Longish hair, and it looked like he might...
a bit odd. Very odd. I'll tell you what we could look at. Because this is quite funny, is the dog, because I quite fancy this, just for a bit of light relief, because the BBC have been getting very carried away with the Winter Olympics.
With the Winter Olympics? Are you watching?
Well, I was saying last week...
There was a man going down on a tea tray. We did well on the skeleton.
The skeleton, yeah.
Yes.
I was saying last week it's the most boring thing I've ever seen. And because it's on so much, they put the TV on
that's
and there
right.
it is.
All week people have been tell Mike about women's football. Women's football can be really good, because we said women's football was rubbish.
It's rubbish.
Women's sport is rubbish in general. Apart from the tennis, which can be okay.
No, I didn't say women's sport is rubbish. I just said women's football is particularly bad.
Well, that's why people have been telling me, tell Mike that women's football is great.
It isn't. Well, you can watch it if you want. It's not like we live in a fascist country. If you want to watch it and if you think it's good, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like saying, you know, the Beano is a fantastic piece of literature. It isn't. You know, you could enjoy it, but it's not actually really worth reading. No. You know. Anyway, have a look at this dog, because this is, for me, this is more exciting than anything you've ever seen on the Olympics all through the weekend. I know that Britain and Team GB has won a couple of awards, a couple of medals rather. But check this dog out. I don't know whose dog he is, but look, he's just running around. It's a fantastic thing. They're trying to catch him. Yeah. He's having a time of his life. Look at him.
So good. Oh, he's
fast. Fantastic, isn't he? Really quick.
Fast.
But the thing that's really funny is he slips over there. Yeah. They keep changing the camera angle, so they're like tracking him as if he's an athlete, right?
Amazing.
As if he's going down the crest
I love that he nearly wiped out and then he got his balance back,
and
like little four legs.
Look at him go. It's fantastic. This is the star of the Winter Olympics for me.
Why don't they just have an Olympics which is just dogs going crazy on the snowy mountains?
And look how happy he is. You know,
he's so
there's nothing, because Pooch knows this, because he just wants to run for his life. Look, he's going over there. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
The freedom.
Absolutely brilliant. That for me is better than anything you will ever see in the Winter Olympics.
That's really good.
Absolutely extraordinary. Now, a couple of other things to mention. Barack Obama on the front page of the Telegraph saying that he believes that aliens exist. Right? Yeah. It's nothing to do with his wife either.
No. Well, his wife is another nasty piece of work, Michelle Obama. But we won't go there.
No.
Really, Obama just bore off.
Yes,
as they say, politely.
You're obviously in the wrong category here, because you're not old at all, but I am. But it says here that basically younger generations enjoy the perception that they are fast and efficient by comparison with older people. But a new study has shown that older people are actually better at performing tasks, significantly better, and they get it right more often than they get it wrong.
But doesn't it depend what tasks? If you see my mother trying to answer her mobile telephone that's at the bottom of her bloody handbag, if you see see her, and then she takes out the phone and looks at it like it's this alien object. My mum's only like 80.
Right,
But if you
wondering
ring her,
why is it ringing?
Right, why is it ringing? And then how on earth am I going to answer it? Like, press answer?
Yeah.
You know, you have to ring about 10 times so that she's heard it.
Yes.
She's located the thing that might be in the bottom of the handbag. Then she pulls it out. Then she has to look at then she has to turn it over because she's written her number on the back of the mobile. Anyway, I don't think older people are necessarily great at all the technological stuff.
I mean,
maybe.
I think, to be fair,
it depends what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the individual, doesn't it? Because if you're a stupid...
I saw you and your son on a scooter going through London, drunk. I think you were drunk.
I was.
Holding on to scooters.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
I did fall off it, though.
But that was... Oh, you did fall off it.
I did fall off it,
yeah. You did at the end, actually.
At the end. I mean, unfortunately. But, but partly because I'm just not used to being on the back of a scooter.
Coach, can we watch that? Can we watch Mike on the back of a scooter?
We probably have to
good.
dig it out. It was quite funny. Did very well, actually, that. But the other thing,
fast,
of course...
aren't they?
They are. The other thing is, I suppose... if you're a stupid young person, you're probably going to be a stupid old person.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that is going to skew the figure.
If you're a smart little kid, you're going to be a smart older person.
Yeah, but it says here that the older people are slower each time they reacted to a number by about a seventh of a second, but they're only wrong 8% of the time, while younger people were wrong 24% of the time.
I think that's what it is. I think that older people tend to be slower, but they're thinking it through.
Yeah.
They're not just saying any old thing.
Right.
You know, so it may just be a kind of, perception that they're taking ages in the supermarket to scan their items.
Yes.
But actually, they're just kind of taking their time with it.
I mean, I had one the other day, and you know how you talk about these little things that annoy you. I was on my way down to Sussex at the weekend, and I stopped to get some petrol, and so I pull in behind this car which had nobody in it because I thought, all right, well that means they've probably put the petrol in the car. They're inside. They'll come out and they'll drive away. This woman comes out. I would say middle-aged, gets in the car and just sits there, and I'm going, would you just move? You know, and I can see her, she's like looking in the mirror, doing some eyelashes and stuff, and I'm going, would you just get off, just move. Eventually, I didn't actually honk the horn, which I normally would have done, but it was like a good 7 minutes before she drove away. Yeah. And I'm just, I mean, that's a woman thing, I think.
I think that I was going to say,
sexist.
Female drivers
Women
can
get
be...
in cars and they don't drive them.
No, exactly.
They just sit in them.
It's not a parking space, this is a petrol forecourt.
What are you thinking, for God's sake?
Comments, Mike.
Comments, yes. Emma is such a great guest as Lord Viking. Well, of course she is.
Thank you.
That's why she's here.
It was very cold on the bike this morning.
Emma is a slice, and there's a picture of cake there. What is that? Is that?
Ooh, what does that mean?
Does that
Hot.
does that mean you're hot?
A slice.
She is, actually. Emma does look like she's sitting in a jungle with all the herons.
I know, this is getting
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Got more herons.
I had to fight my way through the herons this morning.
The studio is becoming a bird sanctuary. Yep, I'm afraid so. How are you for bird seed, says Leslie. Don't send us any bird seed, please.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, people are going to start... Do you know what's going to happen, Pooch? We're going to start getting flamed by stuff. People are going to start just sending rubbish in so we can see if we put it up. Looks like a zoo. I kind of like the heron look, though, don't you? I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg was here on Friday.
Oh, was he very impressed?
I asked him about the herons, actually.
I bet he knew exactly kind of what they're called.
Well, do you know what he said? He said, actually, it's very good that you've taken on... the sort of the attitude of the birds, because apparently that was what Julius Caesar did. Julius Caesar used to use birds as a kind of way of deciding what decision to make. And he could hide behind the fact that a bird had not given him some kind of superstitious nod in the morning, so he could say, well, now I'm not going to... So it was all very sort of literary and historical. And
I
really
thought that Jacob would have been saying, oh, you know, they're a protected species, or have some kind of esoteric knowledge of where they come from.
He was really interesting.
But he knows about everything.
He really does. It's
really,
fantastic. And he was fascinated by what we're doing, and he said, you know, this is the future. What you're doing is really, really interesting. And he said,
and he had his own little show, the Rees-Moggs.
Yeah.
I mean, he's such an intelligent man.
He's
really
such
a thoughtful. Even if you don't agree with him, he's one of those people that you know he knows his stuff.
Yes.
He will always be able to refer to the right prime minister from a century ago.
And he's given it some thought, and he doesn't just shoot from the hip.
Unlike our current prime minister, who, as you say, can you do the Morgan McSweeney pirate thing?
Oh yeah, Morgan McSweeney.
Yeah, well, you know, he was his brains, and now our prime minister doesn't have any brains.
No.
Let alone the little ginger brains.
And there's pictures of him playing football today, and he's got a blue bandage around his right knee.
Oh, is he strapped up his knee?
Has he been on his knees again, do you think? Hey? There he is.
I have no idea what he's been doing.
He's one of the worst looking people playing football as well. He always looks completely hopeless.
Really hopeless.
Right?
It's worse than when he was punching that punch bag.
Oh,
He was
God.
in some North London gym and he had his boxing gloves on and he was trying to. I've never lost a fight. I've never lost a fight I've been in.
When he tried, remember when he said he was a hard bastard? Remember that one?
Yeah.
And you go, you're really not. You're really actually not. Now I know you've got to leave on the dot of 7:30. So look at me now. Look, 5 seconds to go, and I'm ready to. No, I don't want to say dismiss you. That's the wrong word. But
Chuck me out.
But listen, thank you for coming
Thanks for
as ever.
having me.
It's 7:30. Emma Wolf, absolutely brilliant. It's half term, so you're going to have to look after your son for a week. So you'll be a bit busy, I imagine. Under the cosh. We'll be back very, very shortly with loads more stories and loads more clips as well, because we've got a lot to do this morning. It is Monday. It is the 16th of February. I don't think I said that at the beginning. Emma, thank you so much indeed. See you again soon. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Mike asked me to be a bit shorter. I hope he was referring to my news broadcast as, there is nothing I can do about my height. I'm 6'9". I'm perhaps the tallest, but not the most infamous Welsh newsreader. Quick photo, anyone? Britain's deputy PM jets off to Delhi to preach how AI will magically supercharge the economy, create jobs, and fix public services, because nothing says, we've got this sorted, like outsourcing optimism to an AI impact summit while everyone back home is still waiting for their NHS appointment. Meanwhile, UK and German military chiefs pen a heartfelt love letter insisting rearmament isn't warmongering, it's just moral. Because nothing screams peace like politely begging for more tanks amid Russia's ongoing special operation. Keir Starmer's government drops the hammer on social media. Tougher rules, no free passes for platforms, all to save the children, because regulating TikTok will definitely fix the fact we're apparently one dart frog toxin away from international incidents. Oh, and more flood warnings because, surprise, it's still raining in Britain. Shocking. Truly living the dream in 2026. Stay moist, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, tigers.
Thank you very much indeed. That, of course, is Edward Hughes with the news. Did I just hear him say 6'9"?
Yeah.
Why is he reading the news? Why isn't he playing basketball for somebody? Unbelievable. Little facts. Maybe we should get more facts in about Edward Hughes and things that he knows and things that he doesn't know. Lots more to do, obviously, over the course of the next couple of hours. Couple of super chats here. Hi Pooch, hi Mike, Pooch, Charlotte and Emma. Looking forward to another terrific week of the show. Many congratulations, says Easy Boy. Yeah, I mean last week we had the most amazing week. Incredible guests, incredible numbers. Maybe you should ask for compensation for your phone when it was stolen in London. Mike says Astral Roblox. Yeah, well maybe I should. Super chat from Simon. Thank you very much indeed. Simon, we had a great weekend as well. We had Plank of the Week out there. We had Plonk of the Week as well. And then we did the roundup. Every Sunday we do a roundup of all the best of the week before. And actually Charlotte puts it together. And I watched a bit of it yesterday. It's bloody good actually. And it means that, because I'd completely forgotten that we interviewed Graham Lineker on Monday, this time last week. And I watched the whole interview again, and it was fantastic. So I would actually say to you, if you haven't seen it, go and have a look. Maybe this afternoon, if you want something to watch. The roundup is put together with love, and it's all the things that you've forgotten that we already did, if you know what I mean. A couple of other headlines to tell you about. UK to cut Russia's defence fund. This is a story in the I newspaper in which it says basically that the government is going to cut, despite the fact that Starmer and Yvette Cooper have been banging on about giving more money to defence. They're actually cutting money to defence. On the front page of the Times, it's got under 16 social media ban could happen this year, which is a bit surprising. Switch the street lights back on is the front page of the Daily Express. Apparently, despite the fact that they say they're looking after women and girls, it turns out that so many parts of the country now don't have any street lights on at night, which is rather dangerous for them. £90 million spent on public sector workers. That's in the Mail. That says that basically people who work in the public sector are getting paid to do trade union duty, which is crazy. After the Munich Security Conference, Germany and UK are urging the rearming of both of their armed forces, which, of course, is never going to happen, because Yvette Cooper was on TV yesterday morning, talking to Laura Kunsberg and a few other people about how, this is the plan, but they say they have a plan, but actually the plan isn't working because they haven't got enough money to give to the defence funds to actually do any of that, right? Absolutely ludicrous, absolutely and utterly ridiculous. We are going to play, though, you now, are we not? Of course, we're doing a poll, which we haven't even mentioned yet. Yeah, who's the most deserving of a prison sentence? Given that you've got Andrew all over the front pages this morning talking about whether or not he's going to be investigated by the police. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, or Claudia Winkleman. I don't know who put her name in there, but you'll be happy to hear that Claudia Winkleman is right down at the bottom. And it looks bizarrely that Tony Blair is at the very top. Forget about Andrew. Tony Blair, 49% of you think he should go to prison. 31% of you think Starmer should go to prison. And only 18% of you think Andrew should go to prison. So keep the votes coming on that, and we'll keep you updated throughout the show. So many of you watching already. Derek says, great show. Maybe see you in the woods with the dog again. Derek, thank you very much indeed. I haven't been to the woods with Ziggy for a while because at the moment, because he's not really able to get into the car, I tend to take him around just the farm, where he lives, because it's a bit easier for him. But very nice to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we were talking about the Winter Olympics. We've shown you that incredible, very, very funny video of the dog running around, and they're trying to catch up with him. But how about this, right? I was talking about curling being one of the most boring sports of all time last week, which I still believe it is, by the way. But here's a really interesting video that emerged over the weekend of the Canadian team being accused of cheating at curling. Check it out.
You can fuck off. You haven't done it once? I haven't done it once. Okay? I'll show you a video after the game. How about you walking around on my field while I stand dancing around the house here? How about that?
Why we were singing it?
Yeah.
Right? We'll cut that out. Something weird happened earlier on today, actually, where Pooch and I both had the same piece of music in our heads, and now we've just realised why. We were both going to some kind of astral scenario. No, we just literally heard it, that's why. But there we go. Anyway, listen, lots more of you have sent messages in, so we will read as many of them as we can. Jaggy says this, Mike, how is Rupert not your top story? Do you mean Rupert Lowe? Well, Rupert Lowe's not my top story because it's not news, is it? Rupert Lowe has said that he wants to start a political party. And, when something happens, we'll report it. I mean, it was a couple of days ago, wasn't it, when he did that? There's also lots of other stories from a couple of days ago that I'm not talking about either. It seems Mike is censoring all mention of Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain, says Martin. Really? Well, I've just mentioned it. Not much of a censorship, is it? Sad to see MG adopting BBC's approach to selecting news stories. I mean, the problem with people who are carried away, they get very carried away with this stuff, Get Ben Habib on. Get Rupert Lowe on. Well, we've got Ben Habib, I think, coming on tomorrow, right? All weekend, I've seen people arguing with each other about whether Ben Habib is going to do some deal with Rupert Lowe, whether Rupert Lowe is going to do some deal with Ben Habib. It's all very interesting. But, I mean, there's a by-election coming up in Gorton, in Manchester, right? Advance UK appear to be running a candidate there. Restore Britain do not seem to be running a candidate there. It's not very clear to me, perhaps somebody can explain, whether Advance UK and Restore Britain are going to become one, or whether or not they're going to become separate. So, there's nothing censorship. There's no censorship going on. It's just, there are a million stories in the universe out there which are more important. The possibility of a member of the royal family going to prison, for example, the possibility that a load of files that involve Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, which appears to have been censored properly, I suggest make a more important story than anything about setting up a new political party. I mean, if Zach Polanski came out and said something, I wouldn't be that interested either. The representation factor alone would suggest that, I, as a very seasoned journalist and a very seriously taken news person, know what news is. And one of the reasons that I talk about stories which are important is because I know they're important to you. And if you think the most important thing in the world happening right now is that Rupert Lowe has decided to form himself into a political party, then great, good luck to you. But, it's not very interesting, as far as I'm concerned, until he starts putting people up at elections. Is he going to put any people up at the local elections? He hasn't said. He talks a lot about restoring Britain, that's fine. It's a very nice thing to want to do. But at the end of the day, show me the money, show me a story, show me something that's happening, and we'll report it, okay? And Rupert Lowe is very welcome to come on the show if he wants to. But the last interaction I had with Rupert Lowe, he was annoyed with me because I put out a poll asking who would be the most likely Prime Minister if Labour fell at the next election. And he thought it was an insult to him. So it's all a bit weird. Anyway, let's talk to Harry Miller, who is here, of course, to talk about what can only be described as common sense, the way forward, this useless government that we've got, and anything else he fancies talking about. Harry, very good morning to you, sir.
Mike, it's always an absolute pleasure to be on your show. What are we going to hit your great public with this morning, Mike?
Yes. Well, listen, it's always great to have you on as well. I guess we should start with the dreaded Keir Starmer and how awful he is and how the hell he is still here, because I can't work it out.
No, absolutely embarrassing. I don't know whether you saw his speech last week with Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, the guy should be locked up for dissing his own country. It was treasonous, that speech. I mean, fancy going to Europe to talk about a big European issue and taking the opportunity to bash other perfectly legitimate democratic parties in the UK and liken them to Nazis and try and make out that we're on the brink of bloody World War III because of it. The man's a dangerous lunatic. I actually think he's quite a nice guy in many respects, just entirely unsuited to politics. I mean, the most naive director of public prosecutions in the entire history of directors of public prosecutions. A man with absolutely no understanding, no desire to know the truth, takes people at their word, including princes, paedophiles, the whole flipping lot. I mean, he's just an absolute disaster. What he should be doing, he should be heading up some medium-sized business in the UK. He should not be heading up the entirety of the UK. The man's just an embarrassment and is a danger. What I will say to the current director of public prosecutions is you're definitely on the right track with thinking about prosecuting that traitor Prince Andrew, as far as I'm concerned. Yes. I don't think there is a prison dark enough that he should not be put in, quite honestly. I mean, not only is the man paedophile adjacent, I would not be surprised if it turns out that he's been using Sandringham, Balmoral, Buckingham Palace even, as a little shag hole for him and his pedo-noncy mates. For that alone, he should be thrown inside. But when you also add in the fact that he's used his position as a British trade envoy to dish out secrets to his mates for financial gain, and of course, both him and his grubby ginger wife, there's nothing that they like more than the smell of dirty lucre, is there? For that alone, he should be thrown in the tower. I mean, for me, it'd be off with his head, off with a pair of their heads, right, and stick them on spikes. But I don't think we're allowed to do that anymore in this country, Mike, which is a great shame.
Well, do you know what's interesting is that there's a story in The Sun today, because more and more people I'm talking to about Andrew are saying things like, he is going to be prosecuted. He might end up going to prison. I don't know if that's going to happen. But inside of The Sun on pages 8 and 9 today, dozens of documents which featured his name, which journalists had seen about 2 or 3 weeks ago, have now apparently been redacted and had his name removed. Now, I don't know how that's happened, and I don't know who's done that. But the genie's out of the bottle already, and I don't think he can hide from it.
No, he can't hide from it. I mean, I'm a big monarchist, Mike. You know, I've always loved the royal family, but I'm thinking that King Charles's position is getting more and more untenable. It's one thing to turn sort of a blind eye to your brother's bad behaviour, but it's an entirely different one to turn a blind eye to your brother's unlawful behaviour, which appears to have been taking place on Crown property. I don't think that he can pull the I didn't see it gov card any longer. Right. And I think if he wants to maintain or go some way to restoring the reputation of the House of Windsor, I think that he needs to make way for his son and daughter-in-law. I think they're really the only hope that we have for the monarchy at the moment, Mike. And I say that as a monarchist. I love the Queen. I was prepared to give King Charles his chance, but I think he's been just utterly useless on this. So I think that if he loves the monarchy, it's time for him to stand down, to go, and let Wills have a go at it, because otherwise I just see this story running and running and running, and the reputation of the House of Windsor just going down the drain. Now, of course, it's true. The monarchy has survived greater threats than this. They've survived having the head literally chopped off and us being a republic for a decade or so, and then the British people weren't keen on that, so we got another king again, and that's the way it's been. So I think they can survive it, but I think at this moment there needs to be very drastic action. For me, I would be advising King Charles to step down and make way for King William.
Do you know, I think that's more than likely to happen, because I've been talking again to a lot of people in the know here. And for example, as a former police officer yourself, you can't just wander in and out of Buckingham Palace. You can't just sort of smuggle people in and out without anybody knowing, because you've got royal protection officers, you've got bodyguards, you've got staff, you've got a myriad of people who would see what you were doing, even if you were doing it at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't just kind of come in the back door and put your key in the lock and enter the palace, do you? With your Russian, model, and nobody goes, excuse me, who's that you're bringing in? Somebody knew, and it may well be that Charles knew.
Yeah, I think so. The problem with that is that, particularly with the Royal Protection Squad, they were, they were a bit of a shagging squad themselves, Mike. Certainly up in Balmoral, a lot of those guys had got sort of second families up there. What they were doing, that they were pretending that they were on a 2-week stint at Balmoral. Well, a 2-week stint at Balmoral, where in actual fact they were only doing a week, and they were spending another week shagging around with their alternative families. So I think there was a bit of I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine going on. But it's one thing if you're playing away with consenting adults. Don't condone it, but it's not criminal. But it's another thing entirely if you see, and this appears to be the case, if you're a Royal Protection Officer and you're watching 11, 12-year-old little kids being flown in on Epstein's Lolita Express to a little airport nearby and watching them being delivered into the royal household, I think at that point you have to do something. You have to say something. So my money is on this being the worst kept secret in the royal estate, in all honesty. And I think it's for that reason that Charles needs to go. I'm going to give William a pass on this one, because he's grown up as a kid looking up at his uncle, and it does take a little bit of a while before you realise that your heroes, your uncles, are actually flesh and blood like you and I. So I'm going to give William a pass on this, but I don't give Charles one.
Yes, but of course William was dragged into the whole Epstein caper, wasn't he, at the weekend, because it turns out that one of the people who's had to step down from his job, who's a dirty pervert in the Middle East, some bloke who was running Dubai ports, whose name escapes me, but he turns out to have been a bit of a big donor to William's environmental charity, Earthlink or whatever it's called, right? And there's pictures appearing at the weekend of William with this guy, who's in several conversations with Epstein talking about, I really enjoyed that torture video you sent over, or, I've just been in Japan and had the full body massage, it was great. And they're exchanging sort of dirty pictures of women with each other. And William is apparently quite close to this guy. So they can't escape this, can they?
No, they can't escape it, but I don't think that just because you've associated with somebody in one context, that necessarily means that you pick up their dirty moral stain in another context, Mike. In all honesty, I mean, it's the job of Prince William to meet other powerful people, etc. And I think that's just part and parcel of his job. It becomes a problem once it becomes public knowledge that these people are the monsters that they are. Once it becomes public knowledge, then I think that the king or the royal family, they have to distance themselves publicly from these people, and privately as well, Mike. We don't want them having cozy little lunches together either. So again, I'm going to treat this as a glass half full rather than a half empty story, and say that I'm going to give William a pass on that one for now. But let's see what he does in the future now that the information has come out. Let me tell you somebody who I don't give a pass to, Mike, while we're on, shall I? South Wales Police.
Yes.
South Wales Police have just sacked a long-standing, good-standing police sergeant who was in the custody suite looking after all the scroats, ruffians, knuckle-draggers and window-lickers that he has to face every day of his working life. And this 6'4" nutter who'd headbutted a police officer, headbutted a police car, came in kicking and screaming and punching. And what did the custody sergeant do? He got in there, put him on the floor, and restrained him. He's been sacked. Why has he been sacked? Because during the fray, he used a little bit of bad language. Oh my goodness.
Oh, for God's sake.
Goodness. Yeah, you use a little bit of bad language.
What, did he call him a bad name?
Yeah, he called him a bad name, but the evidence given by the so-called experts at his disciplinary hearing was that by using bad language, he had clearly lost control of the situation and lost control of his own emotions. And for that reason, he needed sacking. The fact that he laid hands on this complete and utter flailing lunatic was also taken into consideration. And again, the expert said there are no situations really in a custody suite where you should have to resort to physical restraint. What? Absolute, complete and nonsense.
Right.
This fantastic police sergeant, Sergeant Roger Davis, has been sacked as a result of doing his job in the way that you and I would expect a police officer to do their job.
Yes.
Absolutely appalling.
And presumably these are police administrators who have never seen the rough end of Cardiff on a Saturday night. Because, you know, if you're not restraining people, I'm afraid you're going to get yourself in a pretty bad way. And, you know, of course, any sensible individual knows that, you know, there are times when scroats need to be slapped or, you know, put on the ground or stepped on or, you know, occasionally insulted.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, man. That is just the job of policing. You can't talk somebody down who's that they've lost the plot that much that they're headbutting everything in sight. You can't. What you have to do, you have to take control of the situation. You have to raise your voice. You have to use a little bit of industrial language, and if necessary, you need to clench your fist and stick it in their side in order to subdue them, not because you want to harm them. It turns out this guy suffered no injury whatsoever. Sergeant Roger Davis did his job. He took control of the situation. He subdued the threat, and he left the person who was making all the threats with no injuries whatsoever, other than the bruise on his head that he delivered to himself by headbutting a police vehicle.
I mean,
man
just
should
madness,
be given
isn't it?
a medal, not thrown out of his job.
I
And
know,
this is what's
I know.
happened,
That's
right?
really embarrassing and appalling. Let me ask you about another big story at the weekend, and this is the story of how Labour Together, an organisation which was basically put together in order to secure an election victory for Keir Starmer, to make sure that Morgan McSweeney, his former chief of staff, was running a kind of basically a fundraising arm off to the side of the real Labour Party and only being used for sort of, you know, what you might call, you know, friends of Keir Starmer. Bit like, you know, Friends of Dorothy kind of thing. And here you go with smears. Now, I don't know how illegal this is, but it sounds illegal to me. And Keir Starmer's been facing calls to sack a minister over it because there was a minister who's now a junior minister called Josh Simons who was involved in it. And they appear to have been trying to smear a couple of Sunday Times journalists by calling them Russian assets, having a go at one of them for being Jewish, basically trying to dismiss everything that they were ever writing about Keir Starmer. In what I think would definitely be something the police should be interested in. What do you think?
No, I agree. You know, we should not allow, under any circumstances, those in power to go at the fourth estate. You know, I think you know, journalists, newspapers are fair game if there's an actual story there. But to set up a little unit where your task, where your job is to undermine those journalists, where you are smeared to smear those journalists, this is an attack on one of the great fundamentals of our great British democracy. And if that's going on, you know, I can't think offhand what the crime might be, but there's got to be one. It's got the whiff of conspiracy about it. It's got the whiff of Stalinism about it. It's just entirely wrong, Mike. And I would drive these people out of office. And I tell you what, if you poke the bear, don't be surprised when the bird turns around and bites your head off. And I hope that these journalists and these newspapers do their job and do precisely that. I don't think that politicians should be at all getting involved in trying to silence, intimidate, or spread the chilling effects over our great British journalists. Because if they do, there's going to be a price that they are going to have to pay.
Exactly right. And I mean, you know, because that's the way, you know, that's the way Keir Starmer would like to run this country, so that any dissent was removed and that, you know, people were too frightened to say anything. A bit like, you know, the free speech issue. He'd like to shut it all down so that nobody criticises him.
That's right, because fundamentally, Keir Starmer, he is the director of public prosecutions. Now, your job as the head of the Crown Prosecution Service is quite simple. It's to look for guilty acts and to demonstrate that there is a guilty mindset. You see everything through a lens of black and white. It's the opposite of drawing people together, which is what I suggest a British Prime Minister should be doing, regardless of which party you actually head up. He's not like that. He sees evil absolutely everywhere. He sees evil with anybody that offers a view that is not his own. We saw this following the Southport riots, where he labelled anybody that showed support to those people who were demonstrating as far-right racists. He was looking to show the guilty mind. And that's the reason that we had Lucy Connolly fast-tracked through the system and thrown into jail. It's the reason that prevent officers knocked on the door of a girl in Liverpool because she happened to have she'd expressed some support for the Conservatives in the wake of the Southport riots. They knocked on her door, they came in her house, and they asked her directly which political party she supported. Yeah. They went through her bookshelf and they noticed that she had a lot of Catholic books on the shelf. And this, as far as they were concerned, was a further indication that she was a right-winger. All of that is happening under Keir Starmer's watch. And it's happening because Keir Starmer wants to know the mindset. He wants to know the guilty mindset of people who oppose him politically. And that's another reason. There are many reasons. That's another reason why he is entirely unsuited for the office of British Prime Minister. So we need to get rid of him immediately.
Absolutely right. Could not agree with you more, and so could all the people who are watching us now, and there's an awful lot of them on this show. Fastest growing show in the mornings, anywhere basically. But if you can do it, people, please like the channel and subscribe to it as well. We've got 2.2 thousand likes this morning. Let's get to 5, and let's get the numbers up. Got to ask you about Lindsay Watson. As well, Harry, arrested on suspicion of harassment. People will know, perhaps they won't know, your previous involvement with this character, Lindsay Watson, but do tell us about it.
Yeah, so back in early 2023, I discovered that a police officer called Lindsay Watson, a transgender police officer, was taking to the internet, taking to Twitter and denouncing people as far-right Nazis. He said that the LGB Alliance, which was basically run by a couple of old socialist lesbians, were far-right terrorists. Right. I took issue with this. Wrote to his constabulary, and. He then turned his ire upon me, and I became the subject of round about 1,000 direct threats from PC Lindsay Watson. Again, I complained to Leicestershire Police, and guess what Leicester Police did? They told Lindsay Watson to protect the service, not me, by going undercover and using pseudonyms and fake names. So that's what he did. He accused me of running a terrorist organisation with Suella Braverman, and that Suella and I had been together responsible for a bombing in Colorado. Can you believe? He hounded me for 2 years. He was arrested by Lincolnshire Police, let go, and Leicestershire Police put him back on duty the following day. Can you believe? Eventually, I got Lindsay Watson thrown out of the job for gross misconduct. And his response was to go to Lincolnshire Police, my local police force, and say that I had got him sacked. And by getting him sacked for gross, for stalking me, basically, this was a case of me stalking him. I mean, that's crazy. So Lincolnshire Police investigated me because I'd got this lunatic sacked for stalking me. This is the state that we're in at the moment. Anyway, this man, this complete and utter lunatic, has continued in his campaign of stalking various individuals. And thankfully, over the weekend, I think it was, the police caught up with him and arrested him. And oh my goodness, is he one ugly munter? I mean, he's talking about giant haystacks in a wig. What a individual! I've had nightmares all weekend thinking that I've allowed this, not only a lunatic, but an ugly, fat lunatic in my mind space for so long. I mean, I really hope that they throw the book at him. I hope that they throw him in jail, and I hope that he spends his days in a cell with Prince Andrew. That would be absolutely lovely as far as I'm concerned, Mike.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad, would it? Brilliant stuff. Harry Miller, as ever, great to talk to you, and great to hear your voice, and great to hear your views as well. A very, very sensible character. Harry Miller, find him on Twitter. Harry the Owl is where he is, and he's got so many good things to talk about and so much to say. We will be talking more to Harry over the course of time. Back to Andrew. What are the police waiting for? It says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Senior political figures have called for a criminal probe into fresh allegations that the disgraced royal abused his position to leak sensitive information, including to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it's quite extraordinary what this guy has been up to. According to the Mail, detectives could investigate Andrew for the offence of misconduct in public office over allegations he forwarded confidential reports while representing the government abroad. Police chiefs are already assessing claims that a woman was sent to the UK for a sexual encounter with him at his Windsor home by his close friend Epstein. And if he gets done up for or charged with some kind of sex trafficking case, I mean, he could face something like 5 to 7 years in prison, right? We'll be talking about this coming up in a little while. These are the claims that are so far mounting up against him, a growing dossier of evidence, right? In February 2010, Andrew passed on a confidential Treasury briefing on the financial crisis that was then gripping Iceland to a banker friend, suggesting he reads it before you make your move. Those were his quotes. In July of that year, he forwarded an email exchange with an investment banker discussing sensitive information about taxpayer-owned Royal Bank of Scotland to his advisor David Stern, who in turn sent it all on to Epstein. The following month, Mr. Stern, London-based German businessman who was an advisor to both Andrew and Epstein, asked to help plan the Duke's official visit to China, scheduled for September. After his return, Mr. Stern emailed Epstein to tell him he was planning potential business deals thanks to Andrew's trip. I mean, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who else knew what he was up to? How about this one? In the autumn of 2010, Andrew tried to facilitate a meeting with Colonel Gaddafi for Epstein. Great, in Libya. In November 2010, Andrew lobbied for Epstein during an official visit to the United Arab Emirates with the late Queen. So he's with his mum in the UAE, and he's facilitating a visit for a paedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, who by this time I think had already been found guilty and had served a sentence for that particular crime of soliciting a child for sex, right? Later that month, Andrew forwarded Epstein official reports of his visits to Singapore, Hong Kong and Vietnam, including confidential details of investment opportunities. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and it goes up to 2016, where Andrew earned commission of £3.83 million after acting as a fixer for Greek and Swiss businesses which wanted to build water and sewage networks in Kazakhstan. So he's literally swimming in a tide of, shizer. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try and swear this week. I'm going to try and hard not to. Coming up, we're going to speak to Henry Bolton. We'll find out what's going on with him, because we've got a story on the front page of The Sun this morning in which it basically says that £500,000 has been paid out in compensation to migrants as a result of them having their phones taken off them when they got to Britain. I mean, give me a small break. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Mike asked me to be a bit shorter. I hope he was referring to my news broadcast as, "There's nothing I can do about my height. I'm 6'9". I'm perhaps the tallest, but not the most infamous Welsh newsreader. Quick photo, anyone? Britain's deputy PM jets off to Delhi to preach how AI will magically supercharge the economy, create jobs, and fix public services, because nothing says we've got this sorted like outsourcing optimism to an AI impact summit while everyone back home is still waiting for their NHS appointment. Meanwhile, UK and German military chiefs pen a heartfelt love letter insisting rearmament isn't warmongering, it's just moral. Because nothing screams peace like politely begging for more tanks amid Russia's ongoing special operation. Keir Starmer's government drops the hammer on social media. Tougher rules, no free passes for platforms, all to save the children. Because regulating TikTok will definitely fix the fact we're apparently one dart frog toxin away from international incidents. Oh, and more flood warnings because, surprise, it's still raining in Britain. Shocking. Truly living the dream in 2026. Stay moist, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, tigers.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Edward Hughes with the news, of course. Apparently he's 6'9". I've never met him, to be honest, so I'm surprised at that. Pooch knows him. Pooch never mentioned to me he's really, really tall. Super chat's coming in. One from Keeley. Thank you very much indeed, Keeley62. Paulus says this: blackouts will be because of net zero, not lack of progress, you moron Miliband. I like that, moron Miliband. I like the sound of that. It's got a bit of alliteration to it. Yeah, this is Ed Miliband apparently today warning that if we don't do what he says we should do over net zero, we will be facing blackouts throughout the course of the year. Well, I'm sorry. We don't want net zero. Nobody wants net zero. Nobody ever wanted it. And the fact that we are now facing blackouts as a result is just ridiculous. Jade says this: what has Claudia Winkleman done to deserve being on that list? And that's, of course, the poll today, which is who is the most deserving of a prison sentence? Is it Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? Is it Tony Blair? Is it Keir Starmer? Or is it Claudia Winkleman? Listen, I don't put the polls together, but some people find Claudia Winkleman very annoying. I know you shouldn't be locked up for that. It's called humour, is the best thing I can say to alleviate your concern. You know, it's not actually going to happen. We're not actually going to go out there and lock Claudia Winkleman up, right? Take a chill pill, man. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's not winning the poll, though, which is quite surprising. And guess who is? Tony Blair with 51%. Keir Starmer with 28%. He should definitely be locked up. Andrew comes in third with 19%. And luckily, for those of you who think it's a bit unfair, Claudia Winkleman's only getting 2%. There are 2% of the people in Britain who think she should be put in prison, right? I mean, that's good enough for me as for a reason for her to be on there, for heaven's sake. Now, before we talk to Henry Bolton, who is a former man who was in charge, of course, of the UK borders, which apparently nobody seems to be in charge of now, have a look at this. This is a really funny video that went viral over the weekend. And this is comedian Pat Smith talking about what it would be like if you imagine moving to China as an illegal migrant.
Okay, I think we can all agree everything here is a little bit too Chinese. All the restaurants and cafes and that, for a start, way too many noodles. I don't eat noodles. You know, we're going to need pie and mash, ham, egg and chips. I mean, you need to cater to me, yeah? No? I don't think you understand. I'm not from here, okay? I left the UK because I didn't like it, all right? So I need you to change everything to make it feel like it's the UK, yeah? Still no, is it? Right, okay. Well, also, I can't really work at the minute. Anxiety, yeah. So, when do I get my money? Obviously, got a few kids at home and all, so they're going to need to come here. That's a no-brainer. Why do you keep saying no? I've noticed as well, there's a lot of Chinese people here as well, isn't it? So I was thinking we could get loads of me over here and we have our own little area and then you lot can just fuck off. Does that sound good? It doesn't. Well, no, hear me out, because I was thinking if we get loads of me over here, then we can vote in, you know, one of me to be in charge, and then we can all start telling you lot how to live. And after that, I was going to organise some marches where we go through the streets chanting anti-Chinese sentiments. So obviously you'll need to protect us while we do that. That's a no as well, is it? Oh. And finally, I am here illegally. Yeah, didn't respect the rules on that one. So do I just choose any hotel, or have you got certain prison?
Yes, that's good, isn't it? Pat Smith there, the comedian, basically making fun of a situation which is actually quite serious. And that is that people are coming to this country as if they were like him, going to China, demanding that we change in order to accommodate them, demanding that basically they get political representation as regards whatever it is that they want to do, that food choices are altered in order to accommodate the people coming into the country rather than the people who are already in the country. And while it's very funny and while it's very clever, it does make a very salient point, it seems to me, about what it is that's going wrong with our immigration policy. Let's talk to Henry Bolton, see what he thinks of it. Henry, very good morning to you, sir.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I don't know whether you're able to see that that little clip we played there of Pat Smith, but I mean, it's
good,
funny, but it's prescient and it's actually very accurate, isn't it?
It is. It is very. And I've said many times, Mike, that we sit in this country, or some people sit in this country, thinking that there is not a world outside, that the rest of the world is liberal, progressive, open borders, and all the rest of it, and we're the aberration. They're wrong. Just about every country in the world has tougher borders than we do, right. And yet we're the ones who are being pilloried for having, for being tough. I mean that's why it's amusing. It's a good British sense of humour, isn't it? We sort of like to see humour in serious matters, and but very good. The problem, Mike, at the moment, as I say, is that we have got a school of people in the United Kingdom who are absolutely convinced that the correct, proper human way to respond to people moving across borders, however they move and whatever they move for, unless they are actively seeking to do harm, such as terrorists, they think that these people should be able to move where they want. It's just bizarre. It's naive. It's dangerous, and it's ideological. Puts the rest of us at risk.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it doesn't seem Mike, now.
Just if I may, in the introduction, you very kindly sort of said I was responsible for the UK's borders. I wasn't, but I was advisor to the 57 governments of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe on borders, and I held the portfolio for external border management for the European Union for 3 years.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's closer to being in charge of the borders than anybody that I speak to normally, Henry. So I'll call it journalistic shorthand by giving you that title.
Sure.
The point of the story is, though, surely that we have now, once again, yet another Home Secretary who has promised the world and promised the earth and said that she's going to do things. I mean, only last week, for example, it turns out that there are 16 illegal migrants who are taking the Home Office to court on the basis that they think that it's unfair for them to be sent back to France on the one-in, one-out scheme, because they say that their welfare will not be looked after as well as it is here, that they will be worse off living in a different country than Britain, that they therefore should not be deported because they will suffer. And they'll probably win the case, won't they?
Yeah, they probably will. There is a couple of articles of the European Convention on Human Rights that have not only do they provide wriggle room for all of these people and their lawyers, but that have been used so many times, been allowed to be used so many times, that they've established a clear precedent under law. So, meaning that if a case has been based upon a particular article in a particular set of circumstances, if you replicate those circumstances, then the judgment has to be the same. And so we have really tied ourselves in knots in the UK. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says that we're replicating Denmark. We are absolutely not replicating Denmark. She needs to sort of spend a bit more time over there and talking to them, because Denmark its entire law is predicated on the idea that if you seek asylum, then you are there temporarily. It's a temporary refuge. You are a refugee seeking temporary refuge, and you will be going back. That's the basis. That's the principle of Danish law. In the UK, we don't have that. We have the principle that if we're going to let you in across our border, then we're prepared to allow you to stay. Now that psychologically, yes, but also legally, again, sets a precedent. So once you've set that precedent, it's very difficult to untangle that. The only way out of this is to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Not only that, but leave the UN Refugee Convention 1951 and repeal the Human Rights Act here in the United Kingdom, because all of these things are so intertwined that there's no way of. It's the only way of cutting the Gordian knot, if you like, is to deal with all three. But this government and previous governments have simply lacked the expertise and the strategic acumen to know how to deal with this. we have, I mean, just, we put it all into the Home Office. But you and I and most of the population, if we think about it for more than 2 seconds, we realise that it involves diplomacy, the Foreign Office. It involves even the Ministry of Defence. It involves the intelligence agencies, not all of which are part of the Home Office. It involves the Cabinet Office. It includes the port authorities, the Department for Transport, all of these different agencies, all reporting to different government departments. It is chaotic. It's an absolute circus, Mike. And going back to the 57 countries I used to advise, out of them all, the UK was one of them. The one that never listened, the one that always thought it knew best and always got it wrong, was the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
All of the others, whether it's Azerbaijan or Armenia or Kazakhstan or Canada, all got it. The UK is comparatively, it's a circus when it comes to its borders, and not only its borders, its immigration policy. And it's partly because we've got politicians and now civil servants. 20 years ago, we had some decent civil servants, but who simply can't see the big picture and can't see cause and effect and how these things relate to each other. So it's a mess. We just simply don't have the quality of people at the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I find it extraordinary, for example, that we have one of these security meetings yet again in Munich. I mean, we have them every year. And nobody ever comes up with a plan to halt the migration, which is completely and utterly destroying Western Europe, right? Mm-hmm. How can you talk about security of your own nation without talking about migrants and migration and, the incredible influx of foreigners coming to Europe, not just to Britain, but to Western Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from Southeast Asia, from even South America now. Why do they not want to talk about it?
Because they don't know what to say, Mike. I think it's particularly our team. Keir Starmer went over there and started bigging up the British are going to send a carrier strike group to the high north, to the Arctic and the North Atlantic, that we're doing all these things. Fine, talking us up as though we're still a big military power. He himself is failing. The Ministry of Defence is suffering in real terms a defence a cut in defence expenditure. We have slipped during the time of this government from number 2 in defence expenditure in NATO to number 14.
Yeah.
This is a man who sits there and he talks and he comes out with the words, but is doing absolutely the square root of sod all. And actually making it worse because our allies know. So he's embarrassing us. Now, I took the principle, Mike, that one of the things that we could do in leaving the European Union, because you'll be aware I campaigned to leave the EU, was we could take the lead from outside the EU. We could, the European Union, the European Commission, has a coordinating role and a secretariat role, if you like, that means basically, how to put it, that the nations of the European Union all have to coordinate through the European Commission, and that makes it slow. It's not responsive. It's not agile. It's very slow in decision making and very slow in coming up with a decisive answer to anything. Now, from outside the European Union, the United Kingdom had the capability, if it wanted to use it, still does, to actually lead by example. Say, look, we need to actually all get together to protect the European continent, not just the European Union, the European continent and Scandinavia and the High North, and we can do that. The UK can take the lead. The UK can take the initiative. The UK can stand out in front, and you guys can align behind that. Now, we used to do that sort of thing, but now, again, we don't have the leadership to do it. We don't have the people to do it. Yeah. And Keir Starmer or any political leader really, who's likely to end up in Downing Street, it's simply not there. So it's not happening. That wonderful opportunity that the UK could have to be at front and centre and show example is being wasted. And I say that because you're right. Europe. I'm not a fan of the European Union at all. However, Europe, the continent of Europe, as it always used to throughout the last century, has got to protect itself. We've got to take responsibility for ourselves. And until we have leaders who are prepared to step forward and say, yes, I'm prepared to take the responsibility to secure this nation and not follow the path of consensus and compromise and all of these woolly things that actually prevent you from taking decisive action. You've got to have vision, you've got to have decisiveness and moral courage, and none of them seem to have it.
No, exactly
We're
right.
talking. I know we're talking sort of rather philosophically here, not technical borders. But on that, it's an example. These phones you mentioned just now about the Sun newspaper and the compensation. It's about it's about £6,500, I think, that some people have received
per head.
Per head. Now, this is obviously shocking to the British taxpayer. But why has it come about? It's come about because there was a blanket seizure of phones. If there are powers, already legal powers, to seize phones from people you've suspected of committing a crime. Now, people who cross the border illegally or without the correct documentation and without going through an immigration control are entering the border illegally. That's a fact. That's a legal fact. Now, whether they claim asylum is at that point neither here nor there. So you have a power to seize the telephone, the mobile phone of an individual as evidence as to whether or not they've committed a crime. So there's the tracking information, there's the WhatsApp messages, whatever it might be. Okay, you have that power. But when you, instead of using the correct legal power, you just introduce a policy that says, right, we're going to seize everybody's telephones, which in a blanket way, you're actually not using the legal power that's there available for you. And that's why the High Court has made this decision. So in other words, it's not that the law is an ass, it's that the people who are implementing it are an ass because they have made the wrong decision. They've used the wrong powers. And it's a bureaucratic thing, but that's why we have laws, to protect the sort of the ordinary people, the innocent people, from the state abusing it. This is incompetence. And again, our border agencies are not properly trained. There are no proper training facilities. They don't have any, there's no academy for the border force as such. The whole thing's a joke, Mike. And it needs, going back to point one, the countries that I've helped in the past, one of the things that we've done is we've set up training academies, training colleges for their border agencies to solve this sort of problem. Well, and the first one was in Tajikistan, and they also have, there's also, but without going down that rabbit hole, the UK is way, way, way behind even what most people in the UK would consider third world countries.
But what is it about the fact that nothing can ever seem to change? I mean, you and I, Henry, have been talking about this for probably best part of 4 years, maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And successive governments, successive Home Office ministers, successive, Home Secretaries have failed to tackle the incompetence, right? It's a bit like the NHS. Every single year in October, we get told that, we're about to enter an NHS winter crisis, right? Nobody spends the rest of the year fixing it so that next year it doesn't happen. Same goes for the immigration crisis. We have had a border crisis now for nigh on 5 years at the minimum, right? Since Boris Johnson got in 2019, it's got worse and worse and worse and worse. And the incompetence has never been addressed. Why is that?
Two things. Well, first of all, we wouldn't be in this mess if the people who were running it knew what they were doing. But when they realise that they're in a hole, who do they turn to try and fix it? They turn to people who are already, or either responsible for digging that hole in the first place, or who are living in that hole. And I'll give you an example. If you if you were a Home Secretary who didn't know any better, and you wanted to know how to fix the borders, what you might do is you might go to a former head of the border force, or a former chief constable, or somebody like that, and say, look, how do we fix this? Without recognizing that those people, very professional though they may be, very bright though they may be, they have not got the breadth of border experience to give the Home Secretary the answer. Because the way as I say, the way we've structured our borders, every part of it is siloed. So there are very few people, if any, that have got the sort of strategic overview of how to put diplomacy, intelligence, policing, borders, all of these things, immigration policy, legal issues, pull it all together. So you end up with one person who ends up being if you like, institutionally, sort of culturally compromised. And I briefly, if I may, give you an anecdote. The first country that I helped, I won't name it, was converting its borders from a military security to a civilian one. And the government had identified a police general to be the new commander designate of the border police. And they considered the police to be the lead agency on borders. So I had to work with this guy, and I went along with it. It was the first one I'd done. Then I found that the Ministry of Finance, the people in the Ministry of Finance wouldn't work to a police general, because the police general answered to a junior minister, to a more senior general in the police, who answered to a junior minister, who answered to the minister, who answered to the cabinet. And so then I go to the Ministry of Finance. There's a bloke in the Ministry of Finance saying, listen, I've got my own ministers, I've got my own bosses, and I work to them, not some policeman. And that we had to reconstruct all of that architecture, and then it became the model for 20 years of work with other countries. In the UK, we still have that situation. You have people who you can't coordinate unless you put people in the room together, and they are decision makers. In the United Kingdom, we don't do that, because ministers don't know how to lead in that sense, because most of them have never led that sort of organisation. And the people, the technical people, if you like, are narrow-minded technocrats almost. Their police or their borders or their immigration. And there's nobody with the acumen to pull the whole lot together. And I'll tell you what now, Mike. Here, I put this on the table. This country must. There is no if, there is no but. If this country is going to survive, we must take control, secure our borders, and take control of our immigration policy. Absolutely no ifs or buts. And I tell you now, Mike, that I could put that together in 8 months, but no bloody government will listen. I've written to every Home Secretary and every Prime Minister since 2014, offering that. And they know what's going on in other countries, or they damn well should do, because I was doing all of that work on behalf of the British government, but they wouldn't listen to me. They'd send me out to tell other governments how to do things, but they wouldn't listen to me. And it's embarrassing. It's a shame.
It really is extraordinary that they won't actually try anything different. I mean, you've talked about how some who suggest using the Navy in the Channel is the wrong move. And I always say the same, because, we had the Navy in the Channel a few years ago, and all they did was help these migrants actually to come to Britain. They'd rescue them on the boats, because there's a sort of duty of care that exists in the laws of the sea and all the rest of it. So the Navy can't stop them, can they?
No, I mean, it's a sensitive point, because a lot of people that I know are very keen on this idea, and they're bright, clever people. But let's face reality. We talked about the High North and the North Atlantic just now, and the Munich Security Conference. The world is a very dangerous place. We've got 2 carrier groups heading to the Middle East, US carrier groups, one there, one heading to the Middle East, and a possibility of Iran being bombed by them. We've got Russia, we've got China, we've got, however, whatever anybody thinks, the world is a more dangerous place. And we have very, very limited naval assets. So deploying them to the Channel is a misuse. They're not law enforcement agents. And there are practical things. I put out a video about it a little while ago, a week ago, about this. But ultimately, what we need on our borders is not the Royal Navy. What we need is a fit-for-purpose Coast Guard. That's what we need. Properly equipped, properly trained, working in support of the Ministry of Defence in wartime. You go to Finland, you go to Sweden, you go to Iceland, you go to Canada, you go to the United States, you go to Greece, you go to Turkey, you go to France, you go any of these countries. That's what they have. The UK, again, what do we have? We've got people out in the ocean and or on the seas and with aircraft monitoring pollution. We've got people monitoring immigration. We've got people monitoring counter narcotics. We've got the military. We've got all sorts of people, 8 different government agencies out on the Ogg in there patrolling. All of these things are undertaken in any normal country by one enforcement agency. The equivalent is rather like the police. Whatever town people live in, imagine in your town or your city that you've got one police force dealing with fraud, another one dealing with traffic issues, another one dealing with public order, another one dealing with burglaries, another one dealing with assaults.
Yeah.
Okay, all answering to different government ministries, all wearing different uniforms, all equipped in a different way, all working out of different police stations. That's what we have on our maritime border. It's utter nuts. We've got to consolidate all that. Then you don't need the Navy. The Navy are a military war-fighting asset. Their job is the controlled application of violence, not, and people would love to see a few dinghies sunk. I know they would, but when it comes to it, it's not going to stop the boats. What about the people coming across on trucks? There's still 6,000 to 9,000 coming across on trucks across the in the ferries. No, then there are all sorts of attractive ideas or attractions about putting the Navy in the Channel. No question. I mean, it looks good. It sounds tough. And for politicians, it's a very quick vote catcher. But in practice, no, we need to do it properly, Mike. We haven't got the assets, the military assets. They're not properly trained. They're not properly equipped, and they need to be elsewhere. We need to design our borders as they should be designed, not put a bloody great military sticking plaster on it.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Let me finish up just with something you said earlier today about the Chagos Islands. It looks as though now that deal may well be dead in the water, which I think a lot of people would be happy about, including the people of the Chagos Islands, basically. But it looks as though the government misled Parliament. It looks as though Starmer lied. It looks as though Lord Hermer lied. It looks as though Jonathan Powell lied. And it looks as though America now are no longer supporting the deal. But according to the British Overseas Territories Organisation, the bill should be withdrawn from Parliament with immediate effect. The Diego Garcia base was never under threat. And they say that Parliament was indeed misled.
Yeah, I think it was. I've thought that for a very long time. There's something going on behind all this, Mike. I think we all know that. And whether you look at the Chinese embassy, whether you look at Starmer's visit over to Beijing recently, whether you look at Chagos Islands, and whether you look at whether or not we're really doing anything to stop the industrial espionage, which is industrial in scale, that China's engaged in the UK. This government, and to be honest, to a lesser extent, previous governments seem to have been very wary of the Chinese and dancing to the Chinese tune. And I think that's what's going on here. I'm not going to say very much about this because it's a bit speculation, but maybe somebody else would like to look into it. We talk about because there's another thing. One of the things that has come out of, or it turns out that Ed Miliband has signed a deal with the Chinese, giving them they're going to have remote control of our wind farms. Putting whether wind farms are a good idea or not, and that, all of that to one side, the Chinese are going to be investing in our wind farms, and they're going to be providing a lot of the equipment that goes into them, and they're going to be able to remotely control those wind farms. Now, I'll just throw this out there. Rolls-Royce produce around 70% of the electronics that govern the nuclear power stations in China. Now, I'm not saying whether those nuclear whether we can control those nuclear power stations from a distance, but put it this way: every single aero engine that Rolls-Royce produces sends or is constantly talking to Rolls-Royce so that they can monitor it, so they can see any issues where they can. So. If you follow that pattern, Rolls-Royce have quite an influence over the control over Chinese power stations. Now, I'm wondering whether there might be something in that. I'm speculating, but there's something going on. This government has sold the country, the nation, the British people, the Chagosian people, and our allies down the river, and that bill must be pulled. The Chagos bill has to be pulled. That's ratification of the treaty that was signed between the government of the UK and Mauritius on handing over the Chagos Islands. That has to be pulled. It's not a safe bill. And I do think, I absolutely believe that this government has misled Parliament. And as such, that I think there needs to be a debate about it in Parliament, and a vote of no confidence in the government. This is, Boris Johnson misled Parliament, wittingly or unwittingly, is still a moot point. But this, that pales into insignificance with this. This is a matter of national and allied security, and this government has misled everybody involved. And the individuals need William Clouston, who I know you know, the SDP, and I'm a spokesman for the SDP, has pledged that, not that the SDP is going to enter government anytime soon, but if the SDP did come into government, then there would be an inquiry into the whole affair, and with a view, if necessary, of carrying out criminal prosecutions against anyone who may have violated the law. And William has called upon all other party leaders to make the same pledge. We have to bring every single tool we've got to bear on the government regarding this. It's unbelievably scandalous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Henry, great to see you. Good to talk to you as ever. No doubt, I'm afraid we'll be doing it again before they fix the problem. But let's see what we can
Many
do.
times, I suspect, Mike.
Absolutely. Henry Bolton, man who was not in charge of UK borders, as he points out, but was in charge of many other borders as well. 57 of them, in fact, as it turns out. Henry, thanks very much indeed. Extraordinary state of affairs, isn't it? I mean, how many times are we going to be saying this, that this government, much like the government that came before it, and the one that came before that, and the one that came before that, I mean, the problem really became exacerbated in terms of the small boats crisis after Boris Johnson won the election in 2019. And suddenly more and more people started coming over in small boats, because in those days it was literally a couple of hundred a year. We're now looking at 60-odd thousand a year. And it now would appear that Keir Starmer has had more people coming across in small boats since he's been Prime Minister in the previous 3 years when Boris Johnson was in charge. And they call that the Boris Wave. So what do you call this? The Starmer Storm? You know? Absolutely unbelievable stuff. Mike, why not charge all those migrants that got compo back rent to the tune of £6,500? Well, exactly. We're going to be talking to Alt Mehmet, who's chair of Migration Watch, coming up in a little while to find out how it's possible that we keep getting it so bloody wrong. Alp's also written a chapter in the book we mentioned last week from the New Culture Forum, Immigration, the Betrayal of Britain. We'll get his view on all of that, plus a whole load more as well. This is, of course, the Mike Graham Show. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Mike asked me to be a bit shorter. I hope he was referring to my news broadcast as, "There's nothing I can do about my height. I'm 6'9". I'm perhaps the tallest, but not the most infamous Welsh newsreader. Quick photo, anyone? Britain's deputy PM jets off to Delhi to preach how AI will magically supercharge the economy, create jobs, and fix public services. Because nothing says, we've got this sorted, like outsourcing optimism to an AI impact summit while everyone back home is still waiting for their NHS appointment. Meanwhile, UK and German military chiefs pen a heartfelt love letter insisting rearmament isn't warmongering, it's just moral. Because nothing screams peace like politely begging for more tanks amid Russia's ongoing special operation. Keir Starmer's government drops the hammer on social media. Tougher rules, no free passes for platforms, all to save the children. Because regulating TikTok will definitely fix the fact we're apparently one dart frog toxin away from international incidents. Oh, and more flood warnings because, surprise, it's still raining in Britain. Shocking. Truly living the dream in 2026. Stay moist, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. A couple of people have asked the question, why have you not met him? Well, look, here's the thing.
He's my mate.
He's Pooch's mate. Pooch brought him into the organisation, OK? And Pooch has a legitimate independent nature and a legitimate responsibility on the show. And I don't interfere with that. You know, he makes decisions that affect what we do, and that's his job. And I don't question everything that he does. You know, I know at the beginning some of you thought that Edward Hughes was, you know, a bit gnarly, a bit, you know, kind of, what's the point of this guy? But most of you now have accepted that he's a very, very diligent worker. He's managed to stop messaging people while he does the news now. He doesn't do that anymore, you know, because we had to tell him off and say, look, please, you know, don't do that. He wears suits now as well when he comes into work, because he used to sometimes come in dressed a bit weirdly. And we had to have a word with him about that. So we fixed all that, right? And you know, to be honest, I haven't met him purely and simply because it's not my place to meet everybody. I can't, you know, my time is limited. I can't meet everyone. I didn't know he was 6'9". Pooch never mentioned it. What, you know, what's the problem? The fact that he's tall shouldn't make it, you know, why should he be discriminated against as a result of that? So just cool your jets, people, would you? For heaven's sake. Edward's news is great, says Michael. Thank you very much indeed. I'm glad he's tall, says Jerry. Yeah, we love Edward Hughes, says Alison. Edward Hughes, sound off. Please make him go away, says Howard. No, absolutely not. So glad, Mike, that Donald McLeod is coming on the show in March. See, I didn't even know that. There are things that happen. That's from Lord Viking. There are things that go on around me. I can't be involved in absolutely every decision that gets made. Really? Edwards have got dirt on Pooch, says Moto. Well, that may well be. I can't speak for that. It's very possible. How about this for a super chat from Easy Boy? Henry Bolt is 100% right, Mike. Use your platform to challenge the UK government. We need help. Well, you know, that's exactly what we are doing. I'll be speaking later on in the show on my meltdown about Starmer and how ridiculous it is that he went all the way to Munich and didn't bother mentioning migrants, right? How can you discuss the security of Western Europe without mentioning the massive invasion that's going on from all parts of the world? And it's not just in Britain. You know, it's everywhere. It's France, it's Spain, it's Germany, it's Italy. You know, I don't understand why people are so strangely reticent to talk about it. But let's go to that Munich conference, because there was a couple of interesting things that happened. Hillary Clinton, for some reason, showed up. I don't know why. I was talking to a friend of mine in America the other day, and she said to me, why was Hillary Clinton there? You know, what was she doing there? Alistair Campbell was there with Rory Stewart doing podcasting and sort of interviewing people. You know, it's another one of these sort of, you know, uber globalist jollies. You know, it's beginning to replace Davos as the place where everybody needs to go. I mean, you could see Keir Starmer was never happier than when he could get on a plane on Friday and bugger off to Munich to do God knows what. I mean, what was the point of it all? But have a look at this. This is the Czech First Minister speaking to Hillary Clinton.
We are here on the West, and let's respect ourselves in the differences we have. So I don't really like such a labeling as fascist. I think it's
there are fascists in the world.
Well, maybe there are, but
including in Europe.
I think there are. It ended some 70 or 80 years ago.
No, it hasn't.
Hopefully, you know, this is something I don't really like. That every day, every time I hear labeling someone as fascist or Nazist or whatever, I think we should calm down, because this is dividing the society. We are maybe you are smart people. I'm not as smart as you, but so we should try to learn to talk to each other again, because this is something that went too far.
That's the Czech First Minister Peter Machinka, I believe his name is, where he said basically maybe if you stop calling people names, fascist, Nazi, whatever, that might improve international relations. And of course, like I said, I'm not quite sure what Hillary Clinton's doing there, but here she is getting roasted once again by him, Peter Machinka, the Czech leader, over cancel culture and wokeism.
Well, first, I think you really don't like him.
You know, that is absolutely true. But I really, not only do I not like him, I don't like him because of what he's doing to the United States and the world. And I think you should take a hard look at it if you think that there is something good that will come out of it.
Peter,
what I think Trump is doing in America, I think it is reaction for something for some policies that really went too far. too far from the regular people,
Like what?
too
Give us some
far from
examples.
reality. So we saw the cancel culture. We saw the woke revolution. I don't agree with the gender revolution, the climate alarmism.
Which gender? Women having their rights?
No, let Peter go on.
I think there are two genders. So, but some of
half of us? Can we have our rights?
Some of us think that there is more than one or more than two gender. I think there is male and female, and the rest probably is a social construct. So this is something that went too far.
But does that justify selling out the people of Ukraine who are on the front lines dying to save their freedom and their two genders, if that's what you're worried about?
Can I please finish my points? I'm sorry that it makes you nervous. I'm really sorry for that.
Make me nervous.
Yeah, that's told her, didn't it? I mean, again, as I say, what on earth is Hillary Clinton doing? We've got a poll going out there at the moment, by the way. What is the most who rather is the most deserving of a prison sentence in the wake of what's in the front pages this morning? Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, or finally Claudia Winkleman. A lot of you are saying, why is she in there? Well, because it's funny, isn't it? Anyway, a lot of people think, that show Traitors is so awful that she should be locked up. The winner at the moment is Tony Blair, believe it or not Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew. He's on 19%. Keir Starmer's on 28%, so even he deserves to go to prison more than Andrew does. And Tony Blair, 51%, the clear leader. Claudia Winkleman only getting 2%, of course, there. Alp Mehmet's coming up very shortly, but before we talk to Alp about the terrible story on the front page of The Sun and the migration crisis, and also his part in the book that I've got in front of me as well, let's do Plank of the Day.
Hello. It's Plank of the Day time.
And Plank of the Day, he hasn't been sort of in evidence for a while. So I'm happy to and delighted to say that it's Gary Lineker. You remember that guy? Gary Lineker used to host Match of the Day, was always popping up on social media, managing to complain about Tory government policy, talking about Nazis and 1930s Germany, and about how refugee-friendly he was, and about how he put a refugee up in his house. And then, of course, he produced a letter saying that the refugee had been very grateful for staying in his house. Nobody ever saw a picture of the refugee, which was kind of surprising, since Gary Lineker takes pictures of everything. He's now not working for the BBC anymore. He got fired, basically, because he kept saying things which were inappropriate, considering he was a sports presenter and giving his personal views. He hasn't been harmed by any of that, of course, because he's now making even more money working for, I think he's doing a show with Netflix or something like that, or he's doing a show with someone. But he also runs a very, very successful podcast company, which happens to include The Rest is Politics, which is that Alistair Campbell, Rory Stewart podcast, which for some bizarre reason is watched by hundreds of thousands of people. He also does a sports podcast himself with Alan Shearer. And as you would expect, Gary Lineker got very worked up about the row over Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's one of the co-owners of Manchester United, who came out last week and said that he believed that Britain had been colonised by immigrants. And, cue lots of pearl clutching from people going, oh, you can't say that. They're all lovely people. They're all really, really nice. And, they add to the diversity of our country and they make us richer, not poorer. Well, here's what Gary Lineker had to say about Ratcliffe.
The billionaires.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the studio. I've just been talking to Edward Hughes to make sure that he's behaving himself and he's not doing anything that he shouldn't be doing. This is, of course, the home of common sense. And when you talk about the home of common sense, this is the real home of common sense. And this is where it all happens. This is the sort of the brains of the whole operation. This is where Pooch sits, where he's got all this incredibly quick... Sorry, a bit of a glitch in the system there. That wasn't the right video, obviously. That wasn't Gary Lineker, that was me. If you can't tell the difference, I'm sorry. Let's try again, shall we?
The billionaires, they often seek to...
How are you up? Thanks for coming in.
There we go. The first time I've come here.
Yeah, no, I know.
Would you like some water? Yes, please.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about this as well, right?
Yeah, Charlotte said Rafe's book, and I know he's writing
This one.
But yeah, well,
This is the one you got a chapter in.
I've got the first chapter.
Yeah. So I thought I might talk to you about that, and also this, which I assume you've seen. What's going on now? I can't hear anything. Yeah, sorry about that. Couple of glitches. It's a Monday, give me a break. Sometimes on a Monday, things don't work quite as smoothly as they ought to. But that was Plank of the Day. Gary Lineker, absolute and utter plank, as you might expect. I'm sure we'll talk more about Jim Ratcliffe throughout the course of the week, because lots of people have been giving their opinions on it. Sean says, Houston, we have a problem. Not anymore, we don't. We fixed it. Alp Mehmet is here, the chair of Migration Watch. Alp, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Welcome to the brand new world of the Mike Graham Show. What do you think? It's good, isn't it?
It's very plush.
It's very plush. Well, you're the first person that said it's plush, but I mean, thank you for that. We'll take that. Basically, we've got lots to talk about this morning. I mean, the whole Ratcliffe thing, actually, maybe we kick off with that. I mean, Gary Lineker, they're having a go at everyone who's been critical of migration levels. And isn't it interesting how the sort of the virtue signalling lefties won't hear anything at all said about how immigration or refugees or asylum seekers or illegal migrants are in any way bad for the country. And we're all supposed to accept it. And anyone who says it's bad for the country, or anyone who says it's costing us dear, is painted as some kind of, maniac.
Well, thinking back to what Keir Starmer said about the risks of our ending up an island of strangers, he was also told you've got to apologise, you've got to withdraw.
Right.
He never actually did. What he said was that he regretted that what he'd said had echoes of something that Enoch Powell had said. The reasons for Keir Starmer saying what he did are exactly the reasons that Jim Ratcliffe was pointing to.
Yes.
And there's no doubt that immigration has been way, way out of control. The scale, the pace has been absolutely extraordinary.
Right.
It's changing our society. There's no doubt about that. And I think we're going to come on to that and demographic change.
Yes. Well, because this book that we were highlighting last week, actually, and I'm going to show it again for those of you who didn't see it last week. Put together by the New Culture Forum, Immigration to Betrayal of Britain. It's got a whole series of chapters written by very many different people, different philosophies, different thoughts. You've got the first chapter up about the demographic change that's happened. So tell us a bit about what that says.
Well, if you look back to 1951, the 1950s, we had foreign nationals here to the tune of around 4%.
Right.
By the time we got to 1991, that census showed that this had actually risen marginally.
Yeah.
By 2021, it had quintupled from what it was in 1991.
Right.
We now have just those who are foreign born around, 17, 18% probably.
So nearly
but more importantly, Mike, if I can just finish it, more importantly, the white British, Scots, Welsh, English, what the ONS refers to as the white British, they are now around 75%. And that's happened in the space of 30 years.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because although that's quite an alarming rise, and you can see the changes, with your own eyes on the streets of certainly the cities of this country, you still would say, without fear or favour, that it's still very much a white British majority country. But it's not as simple as that, is it?
No, well, it's not as simple as that because it depends where you're looking.
Yes.
Look around you in London. There are boroughs in London, Newham, for example, where it's something like 70% non-white British.
Yes.
So
London itself, as a city, is minority white British, isn't it now? 38%.
In part, it's
no, I think overall it is, isn't it?
Just around between 40 and 50%.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and it will happen pretty quickly. The problem is that we don't really know exactly how many people there are here who are here illegally. And that is something that I think the government could do more to establish. Our estimates at Migration Watch have always been that it's been around 1 million overall.
Yeah.
It's probably, I think, between 1.5 and 2 million now. So you've got to add all these to those that we officially know about.
This is one of the things that Jim Ratcliffe said, and people picked him up on and said, oh, he's got the numbers wrong. You know, we haven't got 70 million people here. Well, I always maintain, I don't think people know, and I include the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, and the census. I don't think they really know how many people are in the country, because I'm certainly fairly sure, and I know the south coast of this country very well because I spent quite a lot of time down there. There are huge swathes of the south coast from, say, Dover all the way around to Hastings, where you can land a boat and nobody will see you. And we've got certainly information that has come from eyewitnesses who say, oh yeah, I was down in Dungeness the other day and suddenly this boat just kind of pitched up and all these guys jumped out of it and ran into the town, and I'm sure there's a lot more of that going on than we know about.
Well, we get plenty of people saying to us, getting in touch, saying this, that, and the other happened last night, I came across this. So yeah, certainly that's going on. But we've also got to bear in mind that so many of these people who are coming here are coming in legally and staying on without permission.
Right.
And that's
coming
what adds to the illegal population.
Work visas, student visas, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. People who come for a short holiday and disappear into the undergrowth.
And is that partly because our kind of system is so hopeless? Because, I mean, I've also been told by people that the border force, for example, who even the ones that sit at airports and the ones that sit at ports, they count people in, but they don't count them out.
Well, I'm not sure that they count them all in, actually.
What's the point of them then?
Well, I used to be an immigration officer, as you know, Mike, and we certainly counted them in and counted them out.
Right.
Counting them out, that stopped about 30 years ago.
Right.
It was John Major, actually, who stopped it all.
But isn't that quite an important part of monitoring who's here?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you go anywhere else in the world, particularly to countries where, frankly, they're not nearly as advanced as we are, they know exactly who's coming in, they know where they are, and they know when they've left.
When you've left,
and you will be picked up on very quickly if you're still there when you're not supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I've been to many countries where, your passport is stamped as you leave, in the same way that it is when you go in.
Yeah.
America, certainly, they know exactly where you are.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And most countries in Europe that I've been to, certainly since the end of our membership of the EU, they're quite hot on looking at your passport as you leave. They don't just wave you through.
No, and that's something that we could be doing. We used to, in the old days, people would come in, they would give an address, they would be given permission to come in for a month, say.
Right.
At the end of that month, that card that they'd completed and had been stamped and sent it in and archived, recorded, that would pop up on the date when they're supposed to leave, or shortly after. And if they haven't gone, then the police will be sent round.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, there are now so many millions that it becomes a bit unrealistic to expect that to happen.
Yes.
But nevertheless, there is the technology for us to monitor what is going on in the way that we simply don't. And my own feeling is that we need to look again at the whole structure of immigration control.
Totally, because it seems as though it's out of control in terms of not just those coming in, but the monitoring of them as well. I mean, we've been told, I think, by people inside the Home Office before, that there simply aren't enough employees in the Home Office to track all of the people in the country. And of course, we know that there's thousands of people working in the Home Office. I don't know what they're all doing. But for example, that guy who committed those terrible murders in Nottingham, a couple of years ago, Valdo Callicane, he turned out to be someone who had come in on a student visa and who had overstayed his welcome and who had become rightly, I don't know whether he'd become a schizophrenic, I don't know if that's the right term, but, you know, he was a danger to society and he shouldn't have been here.
No.
But nobody was tracking the fact that he was a danger to society or that he was here when he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, well, one of the problems that we have, there seems to be an unwillingness for government departments, for different agencies actually to talk to each other. So we could actually, one way of doing it would be to have a department that says, that doesn't wait for them to come to us, right. But we go to them and say, hey, you know, what's going on here? And that, I'm afraid that's not happening.
It should work sort of like the parole system should work, which also doesn't work, by the way, because nothing really works in this country at the moment. But, you know, there should be surely some form of method by which, if you've come here to do a business degree or something at, you know, Leicester de Montfort University, that after that 3 years is up, you should have to go somewhere to either get your visa extended or to explain why you need to stay, or something. You know, there ought to be some, you know, practical means of tracking people who have finished their degree and, you know, are you leaving the country? Are you not leaving it? What are you doing?
Yeah, you know? No, you're absolutely right, Mike. And dare I say, it's something that the Home Office has sort of divested itself of.
Yeah.
And it's passed it all on to the universities. I think that the universities could be expected to do a lot more to ensure that those that they've been teaching leave. And that's what it's all about. A lot of those who stay on are actually much more needed in their own countries, in undeveloped countries, that it costs them a fortune, these countries, to get the students to the stage whether they can come here and further their education.
Right.
All right, work a few months and get some experience as well. But what we do at the moment, we say, okay, you've qualified, you can stay on. Whatever it is that you've qualified in, you can stay on for another 2 years.
Right.
And then it's strung out even more. And that's just an absurdity, really. And so much of our immigration control, both with legal and illegal immigration, I'm afraid, is totally out of hand. It's uncontrolled, and it's getting to the stage where it's uncontrollable, frankly. Right. And I fear that the governments that we have had and the government we've got at the moment, and I have to say, Shabana Mahmood is proving rather more capable. But
but you say that, but then she seems to be falling victim to the same pitfalls as everybody else. You know, like, for example, the story we've seen in the Sun this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation being paid out to migrants who are suing the government because they've got, you know, fancy lawyers and human rights brigade people helping them out, charities. They're getting $6.5 grand each because they had their phones taken off them. I mean, that shouldn't be possible, should it?
No, but I agree that more could be done. What I'm saying is that Shabana Mahmood, I think, is aware of these, and she's capable of changing the system to one that actually works. And I'm afraid there's nothing like that in train at the moment. One thing that has to happen is the ECHR has got to go.
Right.
And that's relatively easy.
Sure.
We give 6 months' notice and we're out. However, it's the way that it's embedded in our legal system, in our legislation, really. And that's what needs to be unpicked.
Well, because one of the things that's happened, for example, was, you're probably aware of this, but last week, there was a court case filed on Wednesday by 16 migrants who were challenging the one-in, one-out scheme, who were saying basically that they can't be sent back to France or any other country in Europe because the conditions in those countries are worse than the conditions here. Now, that shouldn't be possible. You know, we were told by the government and Shabana Mahmood this was, you know, sort of record-changing legislation that they were doing. The first time we've done a proper deal with France, the first time we've got France to agree to take these people back, and suddenly, you know, they get challenged in a court, and it's all over.
Well, I'm afraid that Monsieur Macron, the president of France, ran rings around our prime minister.
Yeah,
and I fear that was all about, you know, currying favour with the EU and France.
Right.
It was obvious, and everyone knew that it was never going to work. You mentioned it being challenged here. Actually, it was challenged. It's being challenged in France as well, by the sort of people that we really need to remove and do it quickly. It's no good getting 10 back here and 15 back in the other direction. There's about 300 now.
We've brought more in than we've sent back.
Yeah, much.
But,
and there's going to be many more as well.
Well, it's not difficult, this. It's a pure mathematical equation. But if you're going to call it 1 in, 1 out, make it 1 in, 1 out, not 1 in and, no out. That's kind of what it is.
It's like smashing the gangs. There's wonderful slogans. They go down well on the doorstep and they make wonderful headlines, but totally meaningless.
But not if they don't make it happen, which is now why they're being ridiculed, right?
Totally meaningless, and it was never going to happen. The government had an opportunity to pass some really appropriate legislation, shall we say?
Yes.
This time last year. I remember giving evidence to the committee of ministers and other politicians that was looking at the bill going through. And all they were concerned about, what my organisation meant by, they didn't actually say it, but white British, which is the term used by...
Well, it's a term used by the census,
the ONS, and it's in the census. It actually asks you. And yet, that was what the government minister at the time was trying to allude to, that we were somehow, looking at colour. It's nothing to do with bloody colour. Right. Sorry.
No, it's fine. This is the YouTube channel, man. You can swear if you want. You can get worse than that.
No,
we try not to, but but no, it's extraordinary, isn't it? That again, I said this to Henry Bolton. You and I have been talking about this for years, and it hasn't got any better. In fact, if anything, it's got worse.
It has got worse, and it's going to get even worse, actually. And that is what worries me.
Yeah.
If you're looking to the future, the changes, the demographic changes since 1950 that I write about in that book.
Yeah.
I mean, that is picking up pace.
Yeah.
The 10 million or so out of the 10 million people who are here, non-UK born, about half of them came in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Well, Rafe, I think I remember we were all at that the launch of the book. Rafe Harder-Manku said in his little speech that in the last 20 to 25 years, more people have come to this country than had come in the previous 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Which is pretty worrying, really. Isn't it?
It worries you and me, Mike, and the majority of people in this country, and that's something that the government forgets.
Yes.
The vast majority of people in this country are concerned about this, are concerned about the scale of migration, are concerned about the demographic change. Of course they're not. Racist. I mean, I often say, I'm a first-generation migrant, and I'd be only too delighted if those coming here had the sort of opportunities that I had in order to integrate.
Yeah.
But when I arrived in the mid-50s, I was the only kid in my East End primary school that didn't speak English.
Right.
The only foreigner, as it were.
Right.
If you go back to the same school now, I'm afraid that every one of the children... I've got a photo taken in 1957-8, and went back 50 years later and had a photograph with the kids in that
same school,
that same year.
Right.
And there I was in the original photo that was taken in 1957. There I was the only little, and you couldn't actually tell, in truth, that I was the foreigner. I was in the photo with the kids who were wonderful, and I often wonder what happened to them, but they're all in their 20s and late 20s and 30s now. I wonder what has happened to those kids, because they really were lovely, but they were certainly, they didn't appear integrated, their appearance. There were also those who, and it still happens now, the vast majority of them would not speak English at home.
Right.
It's English is very much a second language.
Yeah, right.
Now, you can't have that sort of situation and expect people to integrate.
Yeah.
I mean, what do new arrivals integrate with?
Right.
Where you've got so many different languages, you've got areas where it's a single ethnicity almost, and that, if you look at Bradford, if you look at Leicester, if you look at so many different parts of the country, and that is not Britain.
No.
All right,
but we've now got, for example, stories, and you'll see that ticker running underneath the screen there. We've got a story today, and people have been very coy about describing the communities that are affected. But there are two particular communities. One's in Enfield, one's in the West Midlands, where there's a huge outbreak of measles currently going on because the vast majority of the children in those communities are not vaccinated against it, all right? And that has to be a cultural scenario, doesn't it? And nobody's really talking about it.
There is so much that the swathes of immigration, if that's not the wrong word, and I'm not going to get criticised for that, but the swathes of immigration really have brought about cultural changes that, again, people might say, oh, isn't this wonderful? We've got all these rich cultures. Well, if you've got individual communities, really, with their own cultures, with their own language, with their own shopping customs and ways, that is not British.
No.
How can we possibly remain a united country? How the cohesion that we've enjoyed for centuries? I mean, what we're doing is importing really isolated communities within the overall community, within our society, who are not really concerned about being British necessarily.
Or preserving it either,
Or preserving it. And we're doing very little about that. Personally, I don't think that the government can sort of introduce a mechanism, a machine, and everyone goes through, a new arrival goes through it and it comes out at the other end as,
on the other hand,
integrated. It just cannot happen that way. And I'm afraid that is what the government is looking at the moment. The government thinks that this is something that it can manage because of the huge numbers that are coming in. Well, it doesn't matter because we can manage it.
Yeah.
We can't.
They can't manage
and we
it.
won't.
No, and they're not managing it because people are just seeing the change happening at pace. Communities changing before their very eyes, and as you say, people not integrating, and that is what worries most people. Alp, fantastic to see you and to talk to you. We must do this on a regular basis.
Well, good luck, Mike. I've been wanting to come up to chat to you since the change took place.
Yes, absolutely.
Good luck.
Well, listen, we're doing very well.
Job.
We're very happy. We've got a great audience. They all moved with me, and so. With God's help, as they say, in some places, we shall continue with all of it. But brilliant to see you. Alp Mehmet, thank you very much indeed. And the book, once again, Immigration, The Betrayal of Britain. A couple of people asking if they can get it on Amazon or they can't find it on Amazon because it's sold out. If you go on the New Culture Forum's website, you'll see there where you can get it from. And you can order it, I think, directly from them. So you go ahead and do that. It's well worth a read. Great to see you. Alp Mehmet, thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Alex Salmond and a court case in Scotland that's going on, which is now going to be funded by somebody who you may well have heard of. We're going to be speaking to him in a moment. Let's first, though, get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Mike asked me to be a bit shorter. I hope he was referring to my news broadcast as "There's nothing I can do about my height." I'm 6'9". I'm perhaps the tallest, but not the most infamous Welsh newsreader. Quick photo, anyone? Britain's deputy PM jets off to Delhi to preach how AI will magically supercharge the economy, create jobs, and fix public services, because nothing says we've got this sorted like outsourcing optimism to an AI impact summit while everyone back home is still waiting for their NHS appointment. Meanwhile, UK and German military chiefs pen a heartfelt love letter insisting rearmament isn't warmongering, it's just moral. Because nothing screams peace like politely begging for more tanks amid Russia's ongoing special operation. Keir Starmer's government drops the hammer on social media. Tougher rules, no free passes for platforms, all to save the children. Because regulating TikTok will definitely fix the fact we're apparently one dart frog toxin away from international incidents. Oh, and more flood warnings because, surprise, it's still raining in Britain. Shocking. Truly living the dream in 2026. Stay moist, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, tigers.
Great. Alp Mehmet just leaving. Thank you very much, Alp, for popping in. Our geography teacher was 6'7" and Welsh. That says Tony. Really? That's tall, isn't it? Should have been playing for Wales at the weekend. Absolutely disastrous performance from Wales playing against the French. He got slaughtered in Cardiff, and apparently one of the lowest ever attendances for that game because people in Wales are so embarrassed by how bad they are. But let's talk now, though, about something completely different because we've now got Alex Salmond as the next study, really, because we're going to talk now to Paul McManus, who's a drummer with the Scottish band Gun. He's a supporter of Scottish Labour as well. He's a bit of a celebrity up in Scotland and probably elsewhere as well. I'm doing you a disservice, Paul. Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Hi, good morning, Mike. A great pleasure and indeed a badge of honour to be on your show.
You're very kind, and I understand you also are a compadre of young Donald MacLeod, of the Clan MacLeod.
Indeed I am. Donald and I go back a long way, and I get early morning calls from Donald on a very regular basis with some trouble or other.
Oh yeah, he's quite the lad. Yeah, absolutely. He and I used to spend a lot of time together when I lived up there. But listen, let's talk about the case you're taking up, because Alex Salmond was actually a guy that I knew pretty well. I don't think you perhaps knew him that well. But he was a great character. I mean, I used to have regular run-ins with him because, a bit like you, I didn't necessarily agree with an awful lot of his politics. But he was a decent man, and he was a substantial political figure in Scotland. You know, I mean, he should be revered. But his reputation was trashed by the SNP. They went after him in a horrible way. They launched all sorts of lawsuits against him. And so now you're taking part, or taking hold of, I think, a case against the government to see whether or not you can get some kind of way to clear his name, right?
Well, that's right. I've actually never met Alex Salmond.
Right.
I've never had any direct communication with him, but like you, I didn't agree with many of his politics, or much of his politics, but I did find him a man of great interest. I think he was a great politician. I think he, in many ways, served Scotland, pretty well in the early days, and of course he was the figurehead of the SNP. I have a bit of a track record of taking on these type of cases.
Right.
I see potential injustice here, and I think it's something that should at least be tested in court. I think there's some questions that need to be answered, and I'm putting my hard-earned, tax-paid cash up to support the case. One thing that I would like to correct, and that's appeared in some of the press, is that I have the assignation, in other words, the rights for this case.
Right.
I was granted that from the trustees of the Alex Salmond estate,
Yeah.
and not from from his wife Moira.
Right.
A lot of the Nats up here are giving Moira a bit of stick, I understand, which is dreadful. But
Right.
Moira had played no part in this, although I understand she's delighted that someone is picking up the reins and trying to restore some of his reputation.
Right. Because, he was accused of all manner of terrible, things, but he was cleared of all of them, right? And he was awarded, I think, £500,000 in costs by the Scottish government over the mishandling of those complaints against him. But unfortunately, he died before it could all kind of become, sorted out finally, once and for all. And the estate, I think, went into bankruptcy practically, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Sequestration. I mean, Alec had some challenges when he, won the case and was granted the award. It wasn't a substantial amount of money. This will cost a few quid, and my legal team involves several senior counsel, junior counsel, solicitors or advocates. In other words, there's a big team and a lot of mouths to feed. And Alec, the late Alec, I suspect, would probably find that a bit challenging. Therefore, he didn't get much traction on the case while he was alive. But nonetheless, I believe there is a case, and I'm looking forward to, having our day in court. And, it'll be an interesting process of specification of documents, because I suspect there may be some information in those documents that could be very alarming for certain people in the government.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, we can't go into too many details because it's an upcoming case, but the former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, was in the news last week facing a charge of embezzling nearly £500,000 from the party over a period of 12 years. And obviously, there are lots of questions being asked about the way that the SNP, when Nicola Sturgeon was First Minister, was being run.
Well, I go back to, if you think about the COVID period, we had in Scotland every day to watch Her Majesty Nicola pontificating in a presidential style every day up in the podium. But it seems that allegedly there was a cottage industry of potential fraud and embezzlement going on back home. I mean, I'm surprised she didn't, stub her toe on the fruits of labour when she got home.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot, to be questioned there, and of course that is a live case, and I'm not party to the facts. But it's not, this is not a good look at all.
No.
And I think it's a huge disservice to the people of Scotland who look around their country. I'm in Glasgow. I see nothing getting better. I just see things getting continually worse. I don't mean to virtue signal, but I support a lot of local charities up here, and I'm thinking about starting charities for repairing potholes, etc. Because if we don't, we're going to fall very rapidly into, complete disrepair up here. And, the SNP's track record is abysmal. So whilst they've been getting involved in all the other stuff, people living in the cities and towns or whatever are just seeing, their whole being. It's almost as if they're sneered at by these elites. And I don't like it.
No. And it's interesting you say that, and it's good that you say it, because I think a lot of people in England assume that, there's a huge level of support for the SNP in Scotland, but it's really gone very sour, hasn't it, since the referendum, and even since 2014, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very careful never to, there's the ideology of independence. I happen not to agree with independence, but I respect the views of those that believe in that. And if the SNP were a functioning party with competent, qualified people running it, making a difference and whatever, then I think the argument for independence could be stronger. But I think that it's waned because they've saw that there's been no real effort from the SNP to, return independence for them. In many ways, it's the opposite. And at the same time, as I say, Mike, people are no daft. They can see that their services are failing, their schools are failing, the infrastructure is, disintegrating in front of their eyes. So it's no surprise to me that there isn't the same, body of support for independence, and definitely not the SNP.
No. And I'm just looking at some of the Cybernat abuse you've been getting, which I'm like you in these matters. I get a lot of abuse, as you can imagine. I find it all quite amusing. But some of them suggesting you're not a very good drummer is quite funny.
Yeah, that was
nothing but a Brit nationalist.
They will be right with that one. I don't
Yeah.
tend to agree.
It looking like he wants to get a tax cut from UK government. I mean, it is extraordinary how people get so worked up nowadays on social media, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they think one of them thinks, or several people think I'm an MI5 plant, which is unbelievable. And I mentioned in one of my posts recently, the piece de resistance is that I went into my car yesterday to find a beautifully handwritten post-it note stuck to the windscreen of the car, which simply said, "Aura loss." How very West End.
Yes, absolutely
yeah,
right. It's a bit like, I think it was it Still Game when they had that guy that used to run to the border with England and just do that. It's kind of like, it's that kind of mentality, isn't it?
That's it. But yeah, I've suffered a bit of abuse, and it's amazing to me that, I've had people tell me they'll never buy another record, they'll never come to another concert, whatever. I just get amazed at it, and frankly, Mike, I don't have an agenda other than to try and right a wrong, and I genuinely want to have I love Scotland. Scotland's been very good to me, and I give back as much as I can, and I want the country to do well. I don't have an agenda, I don't see how people can get so vicious in their attack for something like that, but.
I know. And what do you make of the situation with Labour up there? Anas Sarwar sort of stuck his neck out the other week and said that he thought Starmer should go, which I think most of Britain agreed with, basically. And it was like, Starmer is a complete disaster. He's making a complete dog's breakfast of running the country. Anas says that he still stands by that statement. He still thinks that Starmer should go. You got elections coming up, obviously, in May. What's the state of Scottish Labour right now?
Well, I think that Anas Sarwar made the correct call. I think it was probably the only call. He has isolated himself from UK Labour, Westminster Labour, but I think that's a reaction to Starmer isolating Scotland. I don't think Starmer, I often hear he's got a lack of judgment, lack of politics. I don't think he's got any judgment in any politics. And I think, the job preservation of all his cabinet or whatever, who would be surprised that they support Starmer down there around the cabinet table? Because, what do you want? Turkeys voting for Christmas. They're looking after their jobs. I think Anas has done the correct thing up here. Whether it will work and whether it will, reflect in the polls that are coming up, who knows? But I think he made a strong call. I think he made the right call. And I think the real loser from all of it is Starmer, not Anas Sarwar.
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. Well, Paul, is there anything anyone can do to help you in your quest on the Salmond front? Are you looking for help in any way? I presume you've got a team of lawyers working on it already.
I've got a full team of lawyers, and I think we're our side of the fence, I think, is well equipped to take on this lot. But I appreciate support out there, and if anybody has any information they want to give us, we would be grateful to receive it. But I think we're in good shape, Mike. But I've loved being on your show. Donald will tell you I've been a big fan for years.
Well, Paul, you're very kind, and hopefully next time I make it up to Scotland, we'll have a wee bevy together.
I would love that. Mike.
Okay, good man. Paul McManus, thank you very much indeed. What a guy. Absolutely sterling fellow. These are the kind of people that make Britain great, right? Paul McManus, a drummer with a band called Gun. Despite what some of the Cybernat say about him, he's pretty damn good at it, to be honest. Let's get an update on the poll, because we're getting near to 9:27, nearly the end of the show. Who's the most deserving of a prison sentence? 8,000 votes plus today, which is really good, actually. That's the kind of level of a poll that you want. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, Claudia Winkleman. Still makes me laugh. I mean, people go, what's she doing in there? It's for a laugh. Anyway, she's come last with 2%. Keir Starmer, 28%. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, only 18%, believe it or not. But Tony Blair, the clear winner today, with 52% of you thinking that he should be going to prison. He's in the papers today because there's a big documentary going out, I think it's tonight, where his wife says he's a much better politician and a party leader than he was a husband or a human being. That's his wife talking, right? Apparently he's never ever bought her a bunch of flowers in his life, and he's not very good about being romantic. Well, maybe you should talk to Wendy Deng about that. Just Tina says, I know it's early days, but have you thought any more about starting a full channel with guest shows too, Mike? Well, actually, yes, Tina. We have thought about it, and we are in the midst of kind of planning exactly that, because that's entirely where we would like to be. St Andrews Golfer says, as a fellow Scot, it's great to see we have people like Paul McManus who are willing to take on the incompetent elites of the Scottish government. Best of luck to him. Yeah, I think so. Paul McManus, just a terrific guy, and somebody who I think we should all take our hats off to, because not only is he doing something which is really a decent service to the family of Alex Salmond, but he's also doing something which he says himself. He's defending the honour of a man who I knew very well and who was a great guy, even though he doesn't agree with most of what he actually stood for politically. And that, I think, is what makes this country great. We should all be able to agree with each other about being decent, being truthful, being honourable, and regardless of what you believe, you know, being able to have conversations about it. You know, I'm sick to death of all these people who keep slagging each other off all the time, right? Just because they don't agree with them. It's one thing for me to criticise Keir Starmer because he's useless. I don't disagree with him and therefore have a go at him. I have a go at him because he's so bad at his job, right? If he was good at his job and he was doing things that I didn't agree with, that would be different. But he's not. He really isn't. And so let's go, because we need to get Mike's meltdown properly going on this. That bleeding picture of me. I keep objecting to it, but they don't see. I have no control over it. I can't even change the picture. It's nothing to do with me. Anyway, let's talk about Starmer, because you know, there he was sitting in Munich, you know, looking for all the world like the happiest pig in China, and I say that deliberately because, of course, Keir Starmer only likes to be abroad, doesn't he? He doesn't like to be at home, because here at home he gets exposed for what he is, which is a small-minded, petty, vindictive, nasty individual. Some people keep telling me that Keir Starmer is a good guy. I don't believe it. Some people keep saying, you know, fundamentally he's not really a politician, but he's a good human being. No, I don't believe he is. Look at what happened over the weekend. The Sunday Times revealed on Sunday that Gabriel Pogrund, one of their finest journalists, and a guy that I know, not particularly well, but I know him, and I know him to be a very, very good and diligent journalist and one of the best in the country. He was smeared by a bunch of scumbags called Labour Together. Now, Labour Together is a think tank that was set up by Morgan McSweeney, who is, of course, the former chief of staff to Keir Starmer, was once described as Keir Starmer's brain, right? Because he's now gone. He had to resign as a result of recommending Peter Mandelson to Keir Starmer, despite the fact that he knew Peter Mandelson was still friends with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, right? Morgan McSweeney is also accused of running a kind of Downing Street boys club in which women were ignored, were treated badly, were kind of smeared themselves by misogynists who didn't like women, okay? There's a reason for that, by the way, which I don't have to explain to you. But it turns out that this group, Labour Together, under the auspices of a now Cabinet Office Minister, Josh Simons, spent a load of money trying to make out that these Sunday Times journalists were, because they were being critical of Keir Starmer and Labour, in need of being outed as Russian agents, in need of being outed because Gabriel happens to be a Jew. They started smearing them, casting aspersions, publishing papers, right? Pages and pages of deeply personal and false claims were made about one of the reporters. SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn said Keir Starmer must sack the minister at the centre of this creepy spy scandal. He has serious questions to answer about his judgment. Tory party chairman Kevin Hollinrake says Labour Together's behaviour shows a worrying contempt for a free press. Well, we know that Keir Starmer doesn't want a free press. He doesn't like a free press because he doesn't want people being able to criticise him. After Starmer's attempts to deflect from the Mandelson-Epstein affair, the public will accept nothing less than full transparency. Labour Together paid US firm APCO £36,000 in 2023 to look into the backgrounds of Sunday Times reporters after the paper revealed details of £730,000 in undeclared donations to Labour, right? So this company, APCO, submitted a report called Operation Cannon, submitted in January 2024 when Keir Starmer was very much in charge of Labour. He sought to portray two Sunday Times reporters as part of a Russian campaign to sabotage Sir Keir Starmer's reputation. Now, don't tell me that Starmer didn't know about this. Don't tell me that Starmer isn't behind it. Don't tell me that Morgan McSweeney did this on his own and never told Keir Starmer. It tells you exactly how these lefties operate. They don't want you to be able to find out things about them. They don't want you to know that they took £730,000 in undeclared donations. They don't want you to know that they're up to their necks in sleaze and slime and ghastliness. So what do? They try and shut down the people who are doing the stories, bringing that information to you. And that, to me, shows you how absolutely and utterly ghastly these Labour people are, how utterly repugnant they are, and how they really feel about democracy. Cancelling elections, shutting down journalists, smearing newspapers with lies, trying for all they're worth to lock up people for tweets that they don't like, doing away with jury trials. Whatever next? Flooding the country with illegal migrants. It's a shocking state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. And that's my meltdown for the day. And there we are, 9:34. What a show. What a way to kick off Monday. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for all of your thoughts. Thank you for all of your messages. Thank you for all of your likes, for your super chats, and also just for being you. We'll be back, of course, with more from the Mike Graham Show tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp. You don't want to miss that. We've got Kelvin McKenzie coming in. We've got Russell Quirk on the papers as well. I think we've got Ben Habib on too, so you might want to check that out. We'll ask him what's going on with this new organisation called Restore Britain. Is it a political party that's going to embrace everyone? Or is it just going to fall flat on its face? We'll tell you all of it tomorrow. And remember, despite the fact that there's an awful lot of it about, do not be a plank.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.